High in the mountains, a village has endured relentless attacks from an S-rank Fenrir, forcing them to spend every last bit of their savings to hire an S-rank party for its defeat. The Flaming Dragon Fang members stand among the world's strongest adventurers, each boasting their own unique abilities, but Kurt, who ducks behind a wall, desperate to avoid injury. Yet, the moment the Fenrir appears, it targets Kurt first, sending him flying through the air. As he crashes down, the rest of the party prepares to engage in battle. Golnova, the leader, instructs Bandana to hold the beast down, so she pulls out her wire and wraps it around the Fenrir. However, the creature's strength is overwhelming, and it hurls her into a wall. Fortunately, with a healer on their side, she's fully restored in seconds and quickly returns to the fight. She then anchors herself to a nearby tree, allowing Golnova the perfect chance to target the Fenrir's head. He leaps into the air and ignites the beast with the flames of his magic blade. The villagers are overjoyed by Fenrir's defeat and, despite their poverty, throw a feast in honor of the party. However, Golnova can't stand the shitty food and demands that Kurt cook him a proper meal instead. Bandana asks him for something special since today marks their final chance to enjoy Kurt's cooking. Kurt doesn't quite grasp what they're trying to say, so he turns to Golnova for clarification, and Golnova tells him that, starting today, he's being dismissed. Confused, Kurt asks if he did something wrong, but Golnova explains that the issue isn't something Kurt did, but rather what he hasn't done, while Kurt takes care of the party's chores. Beyond that, he's ineffective in battle. And since a party can only consist of 4 members, if they want to grow stronger, they have to replace Kurt with a powerful mage, someone capable of holding their own in combat. Kurt pleads with them to let him stay in the party, but Golnova kicks him in the stomach because he is sick of listening to Kurt's whining. They don't need him anymore, and that's final. The following day, Kurt sets off from the village alone, with no destination in mind and empty pockets. After some time, he reaches the city of Samala, now down to his last few coins, desperately in need of work. Spotting a work agency, he figures it's worth a try and steps inside, where the receptionist welcomes him. She asks whether he's there to hire help or seek employment himself. When Kurt explains he needs a job, she tells him there's an interview and aptitude test required before anything else. She requests some basic information: his name, age, and hometown, so he responds that he's Kurt Rockhands, 15 years old, and he is from Haste Village in the Sheen Mountains. Kershal is surprised, having never heard of a village in those mountains, but she moves on and inquires about his work experience. Kurt explains that he was part of Flaming Dragon Fang, though his role was limited to simple chores, and he was just suddenly fired. Kershal is taken aback when she learns that Kurt was once a member of an S-rank party, and even if his contributions were minimal, just having that party's name listed on his application will definitely boost his chances of landing a new job. Kurt is relieved to hear that, and now the only thing left is to complete the aptitude tests so Kershal can assess his strengths and weaknesses. In this world, aptitudes are divine gifts bestowed by God, and if Kurt's fortunate, he might uncover a hidden talent today. These aptitudes are ranked from G rank all the way up to Triple-S rank, and the gap between each level is massive. Someone with a D rank sword skill would struggle just to swing a blade, while someone with an A rank sword skill could effortlessly cleave a rock in two. Kurt can't wait to discover if he has any hidden talent, but his excitement quickly fades when he sees that every combat skill on his sheet is ranked at the lowest possible level G rank. It's clear he'll never qualify for a combat job, crushing his hopes instantly. However, Kershal reassures him that he might still excel in a trade skill, like alchemy or blacksmithing. There's just one problem: the technician who administers those tests is away right now, so Kurt will need to return next week for his evaluation. Kurt tells her he won't last that long because he doesn't have enough money to hold out until then, so he really needs to find a job today. Kershal understands Kurt's situation, so she asks him to try lifting one of those sandbags over there. Kurt gives it a shot, and as he puts his hands on the bag, he gets a strange sensation, almost like the sand drained a bit of his mana. Anyway, he lifts the bag, and since he is strong enough to do that, Kershal thinks he should be able to handle construction work. Kershal explains that the Margraviate affiliate of Tacone is actively looking for laborers to assist with rebuilding the city walls with her recommendation letter. Kurt should have no trouble securing a position there. Thankful for her assistance, Kurt doesn't waste any time and sets off right away to present himself to the Margraviate. Short later, the manager reads Kurt's letter asking to work there, but Kurt's body is not strong enough to handle construction work. Still, since he's short on workers, so he decides to give Kurt a shot. He tells him to mix up some cement and use it to repair the wall, and his pay will depend on how much he gets done. The manager says he'll be back later to check on his progress, warning Kurt that if he hasn't used at least half a barrel of cement in the next 3 hours, his pay is going to be low. Kurt feels the urge to ask a question, since the manager never brought up anything about infusing mana into the cement to make it stronger, but he chooses to keep quiet, assuming it's probably something everyone is expected to know. Even so, he's surprised that the daily quota is just half a barrel of cement. It feels far too simple. So, Kurt makes up his mind to use as much cement as possible before the manager comes back. When the manager returns, he's stunned to see that Kurt has already finished an entire section of the wall. Kurt apologizes, saying he could have done more, but he ran out of cement halfway through. The manager can hardly believe it. Kurt actually repaired over a third of the western wall. Curious, he asks how Kurt even reached the top, and Kurt casually explains that he just tossed the cement up there and used a stick to smooth it out. Under normal circumstances, the manager would accuse Kurt of lying. Such a claim seems impossible. Yet, since Kurt clearly made it happen, there's no denying he's telling the truth. Curious, the manager asks how long Kurt intends to stay, and when Kurt replies he only needs the job for a week, the manager feels relieved. He informs Kurt that he's already done plenty for one day and can head home now, since he doesn't have enough coins on hand to cover the full payment. He hands him a small pouch of money and promises to send him the rest through the guild. Kurt is stunned, as even the small pouch holds more money than he ever could have earned during his time with the hero party. Over the next few days, he keeps putting in steady work repairing the wall until, out of nowhere, the manager informs him that he's being let go. Confused, Kurt asks for the reason, and the manager explains that the wall repairs were intended to provide employment for people living in poverty. But Kurt is so efficient that if he continues working, there won't be any jobs left for the others. He doesn't hold any hard feelings toward Kurt or anything like that, but based on what he's witnessed, Kurt's ability is easily double S rank, maybe even triple S rank, so he believes Kurt would be much better off working somewhere else. He hands Kurt the remainder of his payment as compensation for the sudden dismissal and then walks away. However, Kurt completely misreads the situation and assumes the manager simply wanted to let him go because he was an awful worker. He heads back to the agency and meets with Urshel to tell her he got fired, and it's still going to take a few days before Kurt can have his trade attributes appraised. Just then, they hear a commotion over at the front desk, and it looks like a girl is trying to recruit someone. But the receptionist at the desk tells her that no one would agree to work under such terrible conditions with what she's offering. Even so, the girl keeps pressing the receptionist to find someone, and she's starting to draw attention with the commotion she's causing, prompting Urshel to step in and see what's going on. Her coworker explains that the girl is looking to hire a miner to dig through an unexplored mountain, but she refuses to provide any upfront payment, insisting she'll only pay if the excavation ends up being successful. Urshel agrees no one would ever agree to those terms, so she tries to convince the girl to hire investors to develop the mine. But the girl says she can't do that because if she doesn't pay the taxes by the end of the week, they'll empower Counter Mine. Just then Kurt walks up and says he is willing to take the job after all. Back in his village, he used to help with the mine excavation, so he has a decent amount of experience. Urshel questions whether Kurt truly wants to accept this job, warning him the girl's proposed contract might leave him completely unpaid. Before Kurt can answer, the girl interrupts, admitting she'd actually hoped to recruit a muscular dwarf rather than a scrawny boy. She'd feel guilty assigning such work to Kurt, but any dwarf would demand at least 10 silver upfront, so since the girl doesn't have that much money, she reluctantly agrees to hire Kurt instead. As Kurt and the girl leave, Urshel feels bad for letting him take that job because it probably isn't worth the time. Honestly, she thinks Kurt would be better off working in a brothel. While she's daydreaming about Kurt, her coworker gets her attention and tells her that a bank transfer just came through. Apparently, it's the remaining money the manager promised to send to compensate for all the work Kurt Kurt did on the wall, and Kershel was expecting a couple silver coins, but it's actually a check for 200 gold, and that's a lot of money. The revelation that Kurt earned so much leaves her so stunned, she trips over the sandbags on the floor. Her friend quickly warns her to be cautious. These aren't ordinary sandbags, but specialized tools for measuring mana capacity. They're designed to get heavier when touched by someone with substantial mana reserves. Most ordinary people don't affect them at all, which is why Kershel can lift one without trouble. But then she recalls how Kurt had struggled painfully to move the same bag just days earlier, making her question whether he's really as average as he seems. Meanwhile, Kurt and Ulia are walking into the forest to get to her campsite. But when they get there, Kurt is a little concerned because there's only one tent. Ulia says the tent is big enough for the two of them to sleep together, but Kurt says he'd never be able to go to sleep if he's lying next to a cute girl like her. After hearing Kurt call her cute, Ulia gets upset because she thinks he's just trying to flatter her. But Kurt says he really does think that she's as cute. Ulia realizes that Kurt was being completely sincere, so she hands him a potato for dinner. It's nothing fancy, just a plain boiled potato, but it's been so long since anyone has prepared a meal for him that he truly values the gesture. He's also thankful that Ulia is sitting down to eat with him, especially since his former companions from the hero party never allowed him to share the same room with them during meals. Later that night, Kurt and Ulia go to bed, but Kurt is having a hard time sleeping because Ulia went to bed in her underwear. He will never be able to go to sleep around her, so he decides to leave the tent for the night and sleep outside. Once Kurt leaves the tent, Ulia opens her eyes because she was just pretending to fall asleep. She intentionally went to bed in her underwear to see if Kurt was the kind of person to assault her in her sleep, but now she knows he's a good guy. The following day, Ulia steps out of the tent and spots Kurt sleeping by a tree, which makes her feel a bit guilty for making him sleep outside. But then she notices that her jacket has been fixed. Kurt wakes up shortly after, so she asks if he's the one who fixed it, and he confirms that he is. She's genuinely impressed by his sewing skills and starts to question whether he's actually going to be any good at mining. But at this point, it's too late to find a replacement, so they might as well get started. Kurt asks Ulia if she has decided on a location to begin mining yet, but she was just going to dig in random locations and pray to find some valuable ores. Kurt tells her she'll never find anything if she searches like that, and he happens to know a much more efficient way. He takes Ulia to a section of the mountain, and after looking around for a bit, he finds a rock full of gemstones. Ulia is stunned that he discovered it with such ease, but within minutes, Kurt has managed to find every single gemstone in this part of the mountain. She can scarcely believe it. If she sells all these gems, her debt could finally be paid off. However, Kurt informs her that she can't sell them. Ulia understands his point, since Kurt was the one who located all of them, meaning he's entitled to the profits. But that wasn't his intention. He simply meant that the gems would be worth far more if he first transformed them into magic crystals. Kurt is right about that. But Ulia says there are only 10 mages in the entire kingdom who are skilled enough to turn gems into magic crystals. But while she was saying all that, Kurt just finished turning a gem into a magic crystal. Ulia is too stunned to speak because not only did Kurt create a magic crystal, but he did it instantly when even the most experienced mages spend at least an hour to make a single magic crystal. Once Kurt finishes converting all the gems into crystals, he agrees to let Ulia take them to sell, so she sets off while he remains on the mountain to take care of a few things he still wants to complete. Ulia makes her way to the city's customs agency and informs them that she plans to sell some magic crystals in the royal capital. However, since magic crystals are extremely valuable, the knight on duty asks where she obtained them. Not wanting to reveal any details, she simply flashes her royal family emblem, putting an end to his questions. This is somewhat of a bluff, considering she stopped working for the royal family some time ago, and they simply forgot to revoke her emblem, but it works nonetheless. The customs agent lets her use the teleportation circle to travel to the capital. Once she arrives, she makes her way to the shop of an old friend and tells Mimiko that she's got some magic gems she wants to sell. Mimiko takes a glance at the crystals, and at first, they don't appear to be anything particularly valuable, but after examining them more carefully, she realizes they contain 10 times the usual amount of mana, making each crystal worth 10 gold. Ulia is left speechless, especially since Kurt handed her 50 of them. Without much fuss, Mimiko casually hands her a pouch containing 500 gold coins. However, before Ulia departs, Mimiko has two important conditions. First, she insists that Ulia must agree to exclusively sell such crystals at her shop. After all, allowing such potent crystals to spread freely without oversight could lead to catastrophe. Second, she demands to know the identity of the person who crafted these crystals. Ulia accepts the first condition, though she explains that she can't reveal the name of the crystal's creator to Mimiko not without getting his permission first. Since Mimiko serves as a court mage for the royal family, she attempts to leverage her authority, demanding that Ulia hand over the mysterious mage's details. But Ulia no longer works under the crown, meaning she has no duty to follow Mimiko's orders. Mimiko quickly understands that Ulia won't reveal Kurt's details, so she settles for requesting one thing that Ulia ensures he doesn't leave for another country. Additionally, she has an offer. If Kurt agrees to work for the royal family, Mimiko is ready to bestow upon him the rank of count, along with unrestricted privileges to use the royal research laboratory and enjoy all its advantages. Ulia then departs from Mimiko's shop, and the following morning she makes her way back to the mountain to reunite with Kurt. However, she's stunned to discover that Kurt managed to build an entire house in just a single night. Putting that aside, Ulia mentions that one of her friends is interested in hiring Kurt as a royal mage. If he agrees to take the role, he would be granted noble status, ensuring a generous salary along with various perks. Despite this, Kurt struggles to accept that such a prestigious opportunity is being presented to him. Though Ulia insists the offer is completely real, she presses him about his decision, but Kurt responds that he intends to refuse. Ulia is shocked by his response, as most people would eagerly seize the chance to become a royal mage. However, Kurt feels unworthy of a position that elevates him above others, and he still dreams of returning to his old role as the Flaming Dragon's chore boy, even if that means begging them to take him back. Speaking of the Flaming Dragon, they're currently getting completely wrecked by a tree monster. For some reason, Golnova can't use his fire magic, so he turns to Marlefis, begging her to heal him. She's been attempting to do so for a while now, but her healing magic just isn't functioning like it normally does. Frustrated, Golnova tells the new recruit to cast some fire magic and deal with the tree, but the new guy doesn't even know how to use fire magic plus. That was always Golnova's job in the first place. Without Kurt around to keep things running smoothly, the party's teamwork has completely fallen apart, and Bandana is the only one who seems to notice just how badly they're falling to pieces. Returning to Kurt, his current task is still assisting Ulia with gem mining, and he mentions that he found a good gem yesterday, so he'll be able to get a lot more for her. Ulia appreciates his eagerness, but she's a bit worried that Kurt might be exhausted after all the work he did the day before. Still, he tells her not to be concerned since he managed to get 6 hours of sleep last night. Ulia is taken aback by that and starts doing some quick mental calculations, trying to figure out how Kurt was able to build an entire house and still get 6 hours of sleep. But Kurt misreads her reaction, thinking she's upset that he slept too long. So he apologizes and promises to work harder to compensate for his laziness. At some point, Ulia really needs to explain Kurt's incredible strength to him, but she has no clue how to even bring it up. So instead, the two of them just head out to continue mining. Kurt leads Ulia to the area he discovered, and while it appears to be just a normal part of the forest, he tells her she should be able to uncover some quality gems here. He does warn her, though, not to dig beyond 50 meters. As he begins to walk off, Ulia asks where he's going, and Kurt tells her that he's headed to a different mining spot, and that they'll meet up again later. By evening time, after a full day of digging, Ulia finally strikes gold, or rather, a massive topaz gem. She had already deposited all the gold coins earned from the magic gems into Kurt's account since he was the one who originally found them. But because she discovered this one on her own, she plans to use the profits to pay off her taxes. She figures she could probably persuade Kurt to turn the gem into a magic one to earn even more money, but ultimately decides against it. She doesn't want to exploit Kurt's generosity by pushing him to do more. Thinking of Kurt, Ulia decides to check on his progress, and given what she's seen from him before, she expected him to overdo it, but even she wasn't prepared for him to have constructed an entire tunnel system in just 8 hours. Eventually, Kurt emerges and tells tells her that he only managed to find a small amount of the specific gem he was searching for. The rest of gems he dug up was just a pile of worthless rocks, which he plans to throw away once he's finished. Curious, Ulia takes a closer look into the cart stones, and something about them catches her eye. They look far too polished to be mere rubble. She asks Kurt what they are. Kurt casually explains that those are actually mithril ores, but in his village, mithril was so abundant in the mines that people usually just tossed it aside whenever they stumbled upon it. Ulia is utterly speechless, torn between disbelief and burning curiosity about what kind of place Kurt even grew up in. Struggling to process this, she asks him what gem he was searching for if he treats mithril like common garbage. Kurt pulls out a small rock and reveals he's been hunting for Orichalcum, though he only managed to gather enough to fill a tiny box. Orichalcum, often referred to as the metal of the gods, is so valuable that even a single gram is worth millions, and yet Kurt casually managed to collect an entire box of it. Ulia had no idea Orichalcum could even be found in places like this, but Kurt tells her you can mine it anywhere. You just need to dig 7 kilometers into the ground to get to it. Ulia decides that's enough mining for today, and since the topaz she found will cover her taxes, her contract with Kurt is over. That means Kurt has to start looking for another job, because no one has told him about the mountain of gold in his bank account yet. As Kurt makes his way to the agency, he bumps into Bandana, and while he's happy to see her, he immediately asks what she's doing there. Bandana lets him know that she's no longer with the Flaming Dragon, though there's a bit more to the story than just that. Following their disastrous mission, Golnova decided to visit a 5-star restaurant in hopes of enjoying a decent meal, but after being used to Kurt's cooking, everything on the menu tasted like garbage to him. Furious, Golnova ends up trashing the place and storms out without bothering to pay. As he walks into an alleyway, he meets Bandana, and she tells him he went too far by destroying that restaurant. However, all Golnova cares about is getting good food, so he orders Bandana to go find Kurt and force him to come back, even if it means breaking his bones to do it. Golnova is clearly losing his mind here, so Bandana doesn't argue with him about it. She just snatched Golnova's teleportation crystal and runs out of the alley. As she departs, she notices the city guards moving in on Golnova's location, and without his teleportation crystal, there's no doubt he'll be arrested for what happened at the restaurant. On top of that, Marlefus was summoned away by the church, meaning the Flaming Dragon party is officially finished. While she omits most of the details about Golnova losing control, Kurt is upset to learn that Flaming Dragon has disbanded after all. This means he can no longer rejoin, but Bandana can't grasp why he'd even want to return in the first place. Kurt clarifies that he owes a lot to Golnova, and since he's still completely unaware of what a jerk Golnova actually was, he's genuinely upset that he won't get the chance to work with him again. Bandana, however, never really cared about Golnova. To her, he was just part of the cover story, so she could keep watching Kurt. Anyway, since Kurt was already heading to the agency, Bandana figures it's safe to assume he's job hunting, and if that's true, then she's got just the thing for him. One of her friends has been needing an extra pair of hands around her workshop lately, and it should be a pretty solid job, especially since this friend happens to be an atelier master. There are only 15 atelier masters in the world, and they are all incredibly important, so their influence is on par with that of a viscount. Bandana asks Kurt if he wants to accept the job, and he says he'd love to, so she hands him a map and sends him on his way. Eventually, Kurt arrives at the atelier master's workshop. Though he's slightly confused, the place looks just like an ordinary house to him. He knocks, and a small elf girl answers the door. At first, Kurt is taken aback, since he never expected the atelier master to be such a young girl, but Michelle quickly clarifies that she's actually the master's assistant. Hearing that, Kurt explains he's there about the job, and Michelle lights up at the news she could really use all the help available. She brings Kurt into the kitchen, and the moment he steps inside, he's hit by the awful stench lingering in the air. Michelle apologizes for the mess, explaining that the master has been keeping her so busy that she hasn't had any time to clean up properly. Just then, the master calls out for Michelle, so she hurries off, asking Kurt to lend a hand tidying up the kitchen. Kurt feels a bit let down, since he was hoping to assist the atelier master directly, but cleaning up is an easy enough task for him, so he rolls up his sleeves and gets to it. 30 minutes later, Kurt has cleaned the entire kitchen and Michelle didn't really tell him what he's supposed to do next. So he starts wandering the halls looking for her. He finds a door in one of the corridors, so he knocks on it and a girl inside tells him to come in. However, when Kurt enters, he sees the girl practically naked. He gets flustered and apologizes for the intrusion, but she doesn't seem bothered by Kurt seeing her like this. Kurt mentions that he's searching for Michelle, and the girl responds by saying that Michelle is downstairs in the basement. As Kurt is about to head off to find her, he catches sight of a dark mark on the girl's abdomen. Recognizing it as a curse, he asks if he can examine it more closely. The girl agrees, and Kurt steps up to her and begins inspecting the cursed area with his hands. Curses like this typically damage the internal organs near the affected region, which would make eating extremely difficult. However, it turns out her stomach is still unharmed, so Kurt offers to prepare some food for her. Meanwhile, Ulia meets with Mimiko to talk about the mithril and orichalcum that Kurt discovered. This time, Kurt didn't even convert them into magic crystals, yet their worth still exceeds 50,000 gold coins, which is beginning to worry Ulia. She questions Mimiko about what might occur if others learn of Kurt's ability in the most favorable outcome. He could be abducted and enslaved. In the worst case situation, he might be killed for posing too great a danger. Mimiko questions Ulia about what she intends to do with Kurt, and up until now, Ulia has considered arranging for him to become an atelier master. By doing so, he would gain enough influence that nobody could easily exploit him. After that, she intends to serve as his personal bodyguard. However, convincing Kurt to go along with all of this won't be easy. He's oblivious to just how talented he really is, and even worse, he constantly underestimates his own worth. Because of that, Ulia knows she has to act before Kurt ends up in serious trouble. Meanwhile, Kurt has just wrapped up making some porridge for the girl he encountered earlier when, out of nowhere, Michelle and the atelier master, Ophelia, emerge from the basement. They're both taken aback to see that the kitchen is no longer a disaster and are even more surprised that Kurt managed to clean it up so quickly. Spotting the porridge, Ophelia comments on it, prompting Kurt to explain that the girl he found in one of the rooms mentioned she was hungry. Ophelia seems a bit concerned that Kurt met that girl, so she makes him promise not to tell anyone about her. Kurt promises, so Ophelia tells him he can go home for the day and hands him 3 silver coins. Kurt is surprised that she's paying him so much for just cleaning the kitchen, but she says he deserves it for working so hard and asks him to come back tomorrow. Shortly after, Ophelia makes her way to the girl's room, carrying the porridge Kurt prepared for her, and she reminds Lies that she isn't supposed to be seen by others. That said, Kurt doesn't appear to be dangerous, so Ophelia doubts there's any risk of him revealing the secret. Noticing that Lies still hasn't touched her food, Ophelia tells her to hold on while she checks the porridge for poison. Still, Lies insists it's unnecessary. She only talked to Kurt briefly, but something in her gut tells her he's trustworthy, and anyway, poisoning her now would be pointless. The curse has already taken too deep a hold. Her whole life has been spent doubting everyone around her, so this time, she just wants to believe in someone without hesitation. Ophelia relents and allows her to eat the porridge, but the moment Lies takes her first spoonful, she suddenly breaks into a heavy sweat and collapses onto the floor. Convinced that Kurt must have poisoned the meal despite everything, Ophelia immediately prepares to search for an antidote until Lies abruptly sits back up, declaring she's perfectly fine. Not just fine, in fact, but better than she's ever felt before, because the curse has been lifted. Ophelia struggles to comprehend what just happened. Breaking a curse of that magnitude shouldn't be that simple. Yet there's no denying it was broken by a mere meal Kurt prepared. Meanwhile, at that very instant, the shadowy organization responsible for placing the curse on Lies convenes in urgent session. They had intended to eliminate Lies from afar using the curse, but now that plan has failed, and they realize they'll need to resort to more extreme methods. That night, Ophelia and Lies make their way to Mimiko's shop with pressing matters to address. When Lies removes her hood, Mimiko and Ulia immediately identify her as the kingdom's 3rd princess. Ophelia goes on to explain that a powerful curse had been cast on Lies as part of an assassination attempt. They still don't know exactly who's responsible. As the only child born to the king and princess Francois of the Gurumaku Empire, Lies's very existence serves as a living peace treaty between the nations. Clearly, someone wants to ignite a war. Mimiko is relieved to see that Lies is safe, though she's shocked the princess could dispel such a lethal curse alone. But Lies quickly clarifies she didn't break it herself. The curse was actually lifted by a man called Kurt. The instant Mimiko and Ulia hear his name, they immediately panic. Ulia still struggles to wrap her head around the fact that a simple bowl of porridge managed to break the curse that tormented Lies for so many years. She's well aware by now that Kurt is capable of some wild feats, but she only left him unsupervised for half a day, and somehow he ended up rescuing the princess. While they do plan to reward Kurt for his assistance eventually, Mimiko believes their top priority should be finding whoever cast the curse in the first place. After all, Lies's room is normally protected by anti-curse enchantments, meaning someone must have interfered with them before she was cursed. Only 3 individuals in the kingdom had access to Lies's room at the time: Sinova Wristcats, the first general of the Royal Expedition Force, Tristan Maynolf, the bishop of the Poland Church, and Isadora, the kingdom's 3rd queen, but they can't afford to throw around baseless accusations. They'll need solid proof before taking any action. Ophelia proposes that they set up a trap to draw the culprit out, and she already has the ideal plan in mind. Since Lies just recently turned 15, royal tradition dictates that she must leave home and undergo a year of training. The ones responsible for the assassination attempt will no doubt make another move. So Ophelia intends to fabricate an atelier master and claim that Lies has been sent there for her training. The assassins will likely attempt to gather intel on the atelier master in order to prepare their next strike, and when they do, they'll walk right into Ophelia's trap. However, they'll need someone with impressive credentials to play the role of the fake atelier master, and Ulia already knows exactly who that should be. She presents one of the magic crystals that Kurt crafted to Ophelia, and the moment Ophelia lays eyes on it, she's completely certain it's the finest quality crystal she's ever encountered. When it comes to Kurt, the following day he returned to Ophelia's house for work, only to find a note on her door saying she wasn't there. Just then, he bumps into Michelle, so he asks her what's happening. Michelle tells him that Ophelia left abruptly the day before. She and Lies went out together and still haven't come back. Sadly, this means Kurt has no work today, so he walks away dejected and makes his way to the guild to grab a meal. As he eats, he catches the conversation of a group sitting at the next table. They're in a panic because their porter fell ill, and without him, they won't be able to manage their upcoming mission. There's no time to put up notices for a replacement either, so it seems they'll have no choice but to call off the mission entirely. Kurt gives it some thought and feels sure he's capable of taking on the porter's role, so he walks over to their table and introduces himself. He explains that he happened to hear their discussion, and while he's not good at fighting, he's sure he can still be a valuable asset to their team by working as a porter. Sina scoffs at the thought of Kurt joining them as a porter, insisting that a skinny kid like him could never manage such demanding work. Cans gives her a smack on the head and apologizes to Kurt for her rude attitude, but even he doubts that Kurt is cut out for the job. Being a porter is physically exhausting, especially considering their team is targeting golems that weigh more than 200 kilos. However, Kurt confidently claims that carrying 200 kilos is no problem for him. To prove his point, he lifts both Danzo and Cans right then and there, making it look effortless, even though Cans is wearing over 150 kilos of armor. With that display, Kurt clearly shows he's more than capable, so the party agrees to bring him on as their porter. As they travel to the mission site, they all take the time to properly introduce themselves to Kurt. Cans is the team's heavy warrior, but despite having a sword, he mostly prefers to fight with his fists. Danzo, on the other hand, is a samurai, and Sina serves as the party's ranger. There's actually one more member, but he's currently sick with a nasty cold. That's exactly why they needed to bring Kurt on as a temporary replacement. They express their gratitude for his help, to which Kurt responds by thanking them for giving a worthless nobody like himself this opportunity. The group is confused, since someone truly incompetent definitely couldn't lift 350 kilograms as effortlessly as stretching before exercise. But they simply assume Kurt must be joking. As the team keeps walking, they hear a scream and Kurt is getting attacked. The others instantly turn back to help him, but they're a bit puzzled when they realize he's having trouble with a slime. Kurt is clearly clearly panicking, so Cena tells him to relax, explaining that all he has to do is destroy the slime's core to defeat it. Kurt tries to do what she says, but when he attempts to stab the core, his knife won't pierce it at all, and somehow he ends up stabbing himself instead. It's obvious Kurt won't be able to handle it alone, so Cena steps in and finishes off the slime for him. Still, she's amazed by just how bad Kurt is at fighting. He did say his combat skills were basically non-existent, but she didn't expect them to be this poor. Kurt apologizes for being so useless, but the others reassure him that it's not a problem. His role as a porter is just to carry the loot from the quest, so he can leave all the combat to them. Kurt is almost in disbelief at what he's hearing. He just messed up horribly, yet no one is mad at him. It's a complete contrast to how he was treated back in Flaming Dragon Fang, and he feels grateful to have found such kind teammates. They finally reach the cave, but it's quite dark inside, so Cena decides to spread some glow moss around to lighten up the area. After the cave is illuminated, Kurt spots some poop on a rock and asks Cena whether he should be worried about them. Cans explains that the poop belongs to a goblin, and judging by how fresh they are, there's likely a goblin nest nearby in this cave. Kurt starts to panic a bit, thinking that if he can't even take down a slime, there's no way he could ever beat a goblin. But Cans reassures him that there's nothing to worry about. The rest of the team can easily deal with a few goblins. That said, if they happen to run into a full goblin horde, they'd be in serious trouble, so avoiding that scenario is absolutely crucial. With that in mind, they press on and head deeper into the cave. Eventually, they reach some ruins, and as they're walking, Kurt notices something odd about one of the walls. At that exact moment, Cena spots a goblin and quickly moves to take it out, but she's a little too late. The goblin had already alerted for backup, and now they can hear a massive horde of goblins approaching from both the front and the rear. The reports didn't mention that there would be so many goblins here, and now they have nowhere to run, so Cena turns to Danzo to ask if he has a plan. But with these odds, the only thing they can do is brace themselves for a brutal death. Kurt speaks up and tells everyone that he found a secret passage in the wall here, and that's wonderful news. But even with the passage, they won't be able to outrun the goblins, so they need a distraction. Danzo and Cans exchange a glance with Cena, and she immediately grasps what they need her to do, so she guides Kurt into the hidden chamber and shuts the door behind them. Confused, Kurt questions why she would do that when Danzo and Cans remain outside, but this was their plan all along. Cans explains through the door that if the entire group fled together, the goblins would surely pursue them all, so he and Danzo will act as decoys, drawing the creatures away to give Kurt and Cena a clear path to safety. Kurt doesn't want to leave them behind, but Cena tells him they can't go back. She doesn't want to leave her teammates behind either, but Kurt has zero combat ability and Cena's fighting skills are average at best, so they would only slow the two of them down. Besides, she says she is sure Danzo and Cans will find a way to survive this somehow. They were fully aware they wouldn't make it out alive. Even so, they had zero regrets about their choice, because sacrificing yourself to save your comrades is the highest honor a warrior could ever achieve. Meanwhile, Cena tells Kurt they have to keep moving. She scatters glow moss around to illuminate their surroundings and scan for a way out, only to freeze in terror as she realizes this isn't just some hidden chamber, it's a boss arena, and now, sealed inside with them, looms the hulking form of an iron dragon golem. Meanwhile, back in town, Liz wants to meet Kurt again, so she asked Ulia to bring her to his inn. After Ulia picks the lock, she and Liz enter Kurt's room, but to their surprise, he's not here. Suddenly, they hear someone's voice telling them that if they are looking for Kurt, he went on a mission in the northeastern caves. Ulia has no idea who is speaking, so she rushes out of the room to confront this person. However, by the time she gets outside, Bandana is gone. She is confused by what just happened, but Kurt really is in the northeastern caves, and he might be in serious trouble. Based on what Ulia knows, a goblin slaying training program was recently held near those caves, so it's possible that some of the surviving goblins ended up establishing a nest there. Ulia tells Liz to stay put because she's heading out to help Kurt, but Liz insists on going with her. Ulia doesn't think it's a wise move. Bringing a princess into a monster-infested cave isn't exactly the safest plan. However, Liz has been practicing her magic since childhood, so she's confident in her ability to defend herself. Plus, since Ulia is technically assigned to guard her, it would actually be irresponsible to leave her behind alone. Ulia eventually agrees agrees to take Lies with her, so the two of them head to the cave, and from the fresh glow moss on the walls, they can tell that someone was here recently. Lies casts a sense enhancement spell on herself, and Ulia thinks she's going to try listening for any signs of Kurt, but Lies gets on her hands and knees and starts sniffing around for Kurt. She had only been around him for a few minutes, but that was more than enough for her to memorize his scent. After sniffing around a bit more, she manages to catch Kurt's trail. At the same time, she hears the sounds of a battle coming from a hallway nearby, so she quickly alerts Ulia and gives her a stat boost to help her intervene. Danzo and Cans have been holding their own against the goblins for a while, but at the rate things are going, they won't be able to hold out much longer. Fortunately, just before either of them can be seriously hurt, Ulia rushes in and wipes out all the goblins in a single attack. Meanwhile, inside the secret room, Sina falls to her knees in defeat because there's no way she can fight a iron dragon golem. She apologizes to Kurt for dragging him into this mess because now both of them are going to die here. But Kurt tells her there's nothing to worry about because he has dealt with tons of these things before. He begins moving toward the dragon, and just as he's about to strike, he leaps into the air and lands right on its tail. With a swift tap of his dagger, Kurt slices the entire tail clean off. One by one, he does the same to each of the dragon's limbs, and Sina can barely believe what she's witnessing. This is the same guy who couldn't even defeat a slime, yet he's taking down a dragon like it's nothing. At this point, she's honestly a bit frightened, but Kurt doesn't get why. After all, mining golems is just a regular thing for him. Just then, Ulia rushes into the secret room to see if Kurt is okay, and she finds him standing in front of a pile of dragon golem parts. Kurt's glad to see her here and asks her to please save his friends because Danzo and Cans might still be in trouble. But Ulia tells him she already saved those two, and while they may be a little injured, they are going to be fine. With everyone now safe, they regroup in the room to talk things over. The first thing Cans and Danzo do is thank Ulia for saving their lives, admitting they wouldn't have made it without her. But Ulia tells them there's no need to worry about that. What really matters is that she has something to share with Kurt, so as he takes some of the dragon parts, she lets him know that she's planning to open a new atelier shop. She invites him to join her, but Kurt hesitates, unsure if he can commit since he's already part of their current party. Cans tell him not to worry about their group. Ulia's proposal is too good to pass up, so he urges Kurt to take the opportunity, since Cans and the rest are fine with it. Kurt finally accepts the offer. Ulia adds that she's looking to recruit a few adventurers to guard the atelier shop and asks if Cans and his group would be interested in the job, to which they happily agree. With such great news at hand, Cans suggests they celebrate by throwing a party once they return to town. Speaking of town, Ulia reminds Kurt that he should get his abilities appraised once they return to the agency. She's already arranged for someone to evaluate him. A few hours later, Kurt arrives at the agency and meets Mimiko, who introduces herself as a royal court mage. She explains that she's heard much about his remarkable abilities and is here specifically to assess his skills. After completing the appraisal, Mimiko informs Kurt that all his non-combat skills are B rank, but she was totally lying. The truth is, every single one of his abilities tested at triple-S rank, and his mana reserve is greater than anything she's ever encountered. She's relieved she was the one conducting the evaluation because if word got out about Kurt's true power, it could spell catastrophe for the entire nation. The situation is so dire that they'd likely have to eliminate any witnesses immediately, and that spells trouble for Kershel, who just overheard everything. The following day, the group promptly sets off for the town where the atelier workshop is going to be established. However, Ulia never actually mentioned who the new atelier master would be, so Cans is feeling eager to meet this person. Ulia can't really reveal the truth either, so she begins coming up with excuses right on the spot. At this point, Sina has already realized that Ulia didn't bring their party along out of generosity, and since she started acting oddly when Cans brought up the atelier master, Sina is beginning to grow very suspicious. As they get closer to the town, Kurt suddenly realizes it's the same place where he once repaired the wall, and since he still believes the Margrave let him go because he wasn't a good worker, he feels uneasy about coming back. Eventually, Ulia brings the group to where the new atelier workshop is supposed to be, but calling it a workshop doesn't make much sense. What they're actually looking at is just an empty plot of land. Cans points out that they can't do anything with just a bare piece of land, and Ulia Ulia knows that perfectly well, so she tells them they'll be staying at an inn while Kurt finishes constructing the atelier workshop. She asks him if he can complete the task by the end of the day, but constructing an entire workshop in a single day is, even for Kurt, entirely impractical, though he could likely build it in 3 days. Ulia assures him he can take as much time as needed, as she doesn't wish to hurry him, and if he requires additional materials for the workshop, he should not hesitate to ask her. Kurt, pleased by this, already has a list of items in mind, so he writes them down and requests that Ulia procure them for him. The list includes things like amethyst, sapphire, and griffin feathers, which makes Sina question why Kurt would need such materials just to construct a workshop. However, Ulia knows better than to doubt him, so she simply assures him she'll do her best to collect everything, though it'll take some time, meaning he'll have to wait about 2 days. And as it turns out, Kurt is completely okay with that. Sina still can't shake the nagging feeling that something is off, and Ulia is beginning to notice her wariness. Though both pretend everything is fine for the moment, Ulia instructs the group to proceed to the inn immediately to allow Kurt to work undisturbed. But before they depart, she reminds Kurt to ensure he takes breaks and eats well, making him promise to return to the inn by nightfall. Meanwhile, after the others arrive at the inn, Ulia gathers them to share something significant. Up to this point, Cans and Danzo have believed Kurt to be an ordinary individual, but Ulia knows she can't conceal the truth indefinitely, particularly since Sina has already witnessed some of Kurt's extraordinary abilities. Sina presses Ulia to clarify who Kurt truly is, but first, Ulia insists on formally introducing herself. She holds out the crest of the royal family and explains that she's an adventurer who once worked for them, and the girl sitting across from them is actually Lies, the 3rd princess of the kingdom. All 3 of them are stunned by this revelation, and Cans feels like he ought to stand up and greet her properly. But Lies tells him there's no need for that. She's currently keeping her identity a secret, so she asks them to keep treating her like any regular girl. Since Lies is the 3rd princess, Sina wonders if that means Kurt is royalty too, but Ulia clarifies that he isn't part of the nobility. In reality, Ulia still has no clue about Kurt's background, but what she does know is that all of his combat-related skills are G rank, while every other skill he has is S rank. The 3 of them are left speechless after hearing that, since S rank skills are almost considered mythical, but given Kurt's abilities, it actually adds up. Ulia explains that Kurt's actual skill level is classified for now, so nobody is permitted to discuss it openly. Even Kurt himself doesn't know the truth. Ulia and Mimiko deceived him, claiming he was merely B rank. However, in reality, Kurt is the one who will become the new atelier master, but Ulia has no plans to reveal that to him anytime soon. Sina rises in a burst of anger and shouts at Ulia, unable to comprehend why she would deceive Kurt in such a way. Ulia responds that Kurt likely wouldn't believe her even if she revealed the truth. She attempts to defend her actions, claiming she's only trying to protect Kurt, because if his skills were to become known by the wrong people, they might take advantage of him. Yet, in Sina's perspective, it's Ulia who's currently exploiting Kurt. Ulia has no response to that, so she simply stays quiet. Meanwhile, Sina looks over to Cans, clearly wanting no part in this chaotic situation. After a short pause, Danzo asks for a bit more context, so Lies explains that just a few days ago, Kurt managed to lift a deadly curse that had been cast on her, and he did it using nothing more than a bowl of porridge. Right now, someone is targeting Lies' life, which is the real reason this entire atelier master setup was created in the first place. The goal is to draw the assassins out and uncover whoever is orchestrating everything. But once again, Kurt is completely unaware of any of this, while it might appear selfish to involve Kurt in their scheme without his knowledge. Both Lies and Ulia genuinely care for him and would never wish any harm to come his way. Lies asks them if they would be willing to maintain this secret and collaborate with them to guarantee Kurt's protection. Danzo points out that as adventurers, they're under no obligation to follow a royal's commands, but since Kurt is their friend, they'll go to any lengths to keep him safe. Can shares the same sentiment, and Lies is relieved to have them aligned with their plan. However, Sina thinks their devotion seems excessive considering they've only known Kurt for 2 days at this point. Ulia gets where Sina is coming from, because even though she speaks about Kurt like they've known each other for ages, the reality is she only met him 6 days ago, and she's still struggling to wrap her head around around everything she's seen him do in that short time. Sina says she needs to take a walk to clear her head before making any decisions, and while she's out, she ends up heading toward Kurt's work site, thinking that he deserves to know the truth about how powerful he really is. But to her complete surprise, in just the few hours since they left, Kurt has already managed to finish laying down the entire foundation for the workshop. She asks him if he actually did all of this on his own, and Kurt confirms that he did. He figures this level of work is normal, especially since Ulia told him he's B rank, but there's no way any B rank worker could have accomplished something like this. Kurt's grasp of ranks is completely confused at this point, and it doesn't help that constructing a dozen houses in a single day was fairly typical for the folks in his village. So, from Kurt's viewpoint, he's working much slower than he should be. Sina still feels uneasy about Ulia relying on Kurt to construct the workshop, so she decides to ask him whether he feels bothered by having so much work pushed onto him. But Kurt responds that he has no reason to feel upset, since he genuinely enjoys doing this kind of thing. When he was a member of the hero party, they constantly called him worthless and eventually cast him out. But in this place, people actually recognize how valuable he is, and for him, that's already more than he ever hoped for. Meanwhile, Danzo waits in the town square for a crucial meeting with an informant, who happens to be Bandana. Recall that Danzo's party only brought Kurt on because their porter fell ill. It turns out that the porter, Bandana, was secretly a spy who infiltrated Danzo's party with the express purpose of sabotaging it from the inside. Apparently, he was recruited by a band of rival adventurers jealous of Danzo's party's success. She had already located Bandana and handed over precise instructions on where to find him, leaving Danzo free to use that intel however he wants. Danzo then compensates her for the solid work, and that same night, he makes his way to a tavern. Sitting at one of the tables is a bald man, fuming, partly because the waitress gave him a look of pure disgust when he tried to touch her, and partly because his scheme to eliminate Danzo's party had ended in total failure. But Bandana already has another scheme prepared. He's learned that Danzo's party is involved with an atelier workshop tied to the third princess, meaning targeting them now could be extremely profitable. Just then, Danzo speaks up, coldly asking if he's savoring his last drink. The moment Bandana recognizes Danzo's voice, he panics and runs away in a desperate attempt to escape. Bandana dashes through the alley, but he suddenly stumbles over a cleverly placed wire, crashing to the ground as Danzo approaches at a calm, steady pace. At first, Danzo had dismissed Bandana's odd behavior when he called in sick for that mining job, but now it's obvious to him that it was all part of a setup. Bandana tries to act clueless, pretending he doesn't know what Danzo is accusing him of, but it's far too late for that. Danzo unsheathes his sword and swings it toward Bandana's neck, only to stop himself at the last moment and choose to spare his life. He would rather not get blood on his hands over this, so he warns Bandana to stay away from him and his friends, otherwise, next time he won't be so merciful. Danzo then walks away, and from behind a corner, we see Bandana watching the whole thing. She is disappointed that Danzo didn't finish Bandana off, because he will probably be a problem in the future, so now she has to finish him off personally. But before she can act, two mysterious figures in cloaks appear out of nowhere and begin dragging Bandana away. Bandana immediately identifies them as operatives of the Phantom Squad, Mimiko's personal covert unit. She wonders about why a royal court mage would be involved in such affairs, when suddenly her messenger Crow arrives, delivering a crucial letter. It is from her superior, and it's telling her to avoid interfering too much, because this matter is under Marlefus jurisdiction. Again, Bandana is disappointed, but she does have clear orders to leave Marlefus operation alone, and since there's nothing left for her to do here, it's time for her to head back to Kurt's hometown. Speaking of Marlefus, her situation is dire, as she's been captured and is now trapped within a magic circle. Meanwhile, back in town, Danzo and Cans wake up the next morning and are utterly stunned by the workshop Kurt has built. Not only that, but he somehow found time to plant trees and hedges, and they wonder how on earth he made vegetation grow so quickly. But while the others are stunned, Liz is busy fantasizing about getting married to Kurt and living here with him for the rest of her life. Just then, Kurt comes out to greet everyone and invites them in. He gives them a little tour of the house, including the main entrance, the two basement floors, and the water purification system he created with magic gems. He even built bedrooms for everyone, along with a special final one reserved for the atelier master. But on that note, Ulia still hasn't revealed who the atelier master is supposed to be. She's not ready to tell Kurt that he's actually the one meant to fill that role. So she comes up with an excuse about the master being too busy right now, then quickly tries to shift the conversation by asking Kurt which room is his. But Kurt's self-esteem is so low that he doesn't think he deserves a room since all he is good for is doing chores. He was planning to just sleep in a broom closet, but everyone immediately refuses to let that happen. They tell Kurt to just use the room that he made for the atelier master, since no one is using it right now, but it takes a whole 2 hours for them to convince him to agree to it. On the other hand, Ulia asks Kurt if he's able to put up a barrier around the house to keep curses away, but since Kurt has never attempted barrier magic before, he's not confident he could pull it off. Given that, Ulia decides she'll have to rely on the barrier spells Mimico had prepared earlier, and she ends up spending the entire night placing them around the house. The last seal needs to go directly in front of Liz's room, so Ulia walks over to hang it up. But when Liz hears footsteps outside her door, she thinks Kurt is trying to sneak into her room, so she rushes out to welcome him with open arms. But when she sees Ulia, she is really disappointed because she was looking forward to spending the night in bed with Kurt. Ulia tells her to quit thinking about strange things and warns Liz not to exploit Kurt's naivety, because given how eager he is to be helpful, if she were to ask him to sleep with her, he'd probably go along with it. The following morning, Kurt is busy preparing breakfast for everyone when Liz walks out wearing nothing but an apron. Ulia scolds her for trying to deprave Kurt, but Liz replies that it's fine since she is wearing clothes underneath. In any case, once the meal is ready, everyone gathers around the table, and they all end up loving the food Kurt cooked. Speaking of Kurt, Ulia inquires why he isn't with them. Liz remembers Kurt mentioning he wanted to clean because someone had scrawled graffiti across the mansion's walls. Ulia instantly suspects he was likely referring to the barrier spells she had placed. Ordinarily, erasing barrier spells with a mere rag should be impossible, but this is Kurt we're dealing with, so Ulia hurries to intervene. Unfortunately, she arrives too late, as Kurt has already scrubbed away every single barrier spell. He still believes it was just ordinary graffiti, unaware of the curse assassination attempt on Liz, since Ulia never informed him. Now that Liz is fully exposed to curses once more and Mimico isn't around to create any new barrier spells, Ulia finds herself at a loss for what to do next. Meanwhile, the bishop of the church summoned Marlefus, and upon meeting him, he immediately informs her that she is being excommunicated. Shocked, Marlefus demands to know the reason behind this decision. The bishop then clarifies that there is substantial evidence, along with numerous complaints, suggesting that the Flaming Dragon Party is violent and destructive. In fact, the bishop recently learned that Golnova is now a wanted criminal. Because of this, the church no longer wishes to have any association with Marlefus. Marlefus attempts to appeal the decision, arguing that she hasn't personally done anything bad. Well, except from that one time she had to use her lightning magic in a royal capital restaurant, but that was purely in self-defense, since she wasn't happy with the food they served. Honestly, the waiter totally deserved to be electrocuted as a lesson. That excuse isn't enough. But then again, the bishop isn't exactly a saint either, so instead, he tells Marlefus that he's willing to overlook her minor sins, and might even grant her the rank of priest, if she agrees to do one thing for him. The moment Marlefus hears about the possibility of becoming a priest, her eyes light up with excitement. She's absolutely ready to do whatever the bishop demands. First, he pours a glass of wine and orders for her to drink, but then, things take a sharp turn from what she anticipated. Instead of some simple task, the bishop wants her to help assassinate the kingdom's third princess. Normally, Marlefus would never agree to something like this. However, the wine she just drank had a curse placed on it. Unless she agrees to assassinate the princess, she's doomed to die a painful death within a month. With no other choice left, she swears to assist the bishop with his scheme, and that scheme involves trapping Marlefus inside a magic circle with a demon lurking nearby. Meanwhile, things remain fairly normal over at Kurt's mansion. kitchen. Right now, everyone is enjoying a delicious breakfast, and for some reason, Lies hasn't been hit with any new curses, even though Kurt removed all the curse protections. So far, Ulia hasn't managed to figure out why that is. Still, since they have quick access to Kurt's magical cooking, it should be enough to counteract any curses that might target Lies. Either way, it seems she no longer has to be concerned about Lies' safety, especially now that Mimico has finally made it to town. With Ophelia's assistance, they've established an information network designed to track down anyone who might try to hurt Lies. Lies observes that something feels unique about the cake Kurt baked today. Kurt then shares that he used rice flour in place of traditional flour. Lies adores the flavor, as it brings back memories of the rice porridge Kurt prepared for her when they first crossed paths. So, she inquires if Kurt would make it for her again should she ever fall under a curse. Kurt tells her he'd be happy to make as much rice porridge as she wants, but Lies shouldn't worry about being cursed again. Hearing this, Ulia is surprised, so she asks Kurt how he can be so certain, especially since he mentioned before that he couldn't create any anti-curse barriers. Kurt explains that he isn't able to set up any barriers inside the house, but that's simply because the entire mansion itself already serves as a curse barrier. This means any magic related to curses will automatically be reflected, though Kurt did make a few adjustments to it. As it happens, the assassins targeting Lies have just decided to cast another curse on her. The Magger initiates the ritual for his most powerful curse, yet, rather than functioning as planned, the curse dissipates, and the magician finds himself cursed to endure a constant flashbang to the face. Kurt established the barrier to achieve this, as he wished to avoid unintentionally killing someone with a reflected curse, even if they likely had it coming, and this proved to be a far superior choice. Ulia is amazed by Kurt's skill once again. She feels relieved knowing that Kurt is protecting Lies and keeping her safe. However, she really must hurry inside for Ophelia and Mimico so they can begin their search for anyone emitting a glow, since Ulia will be away for some time. Kurt approaches Lies and casually asks if she'd like to join him for some shopping. Lies is surprised that Kurt is essentially asking her out on a date, but he simply thought it would be pleasant to stroll through the city together, especially considering Lies hasn't even left the mansion yet. She appreciates the gesture, but given the current situation, she explains that she absolutely can't go outside. Meanwhile, up on the city walls, General Allraid and his right hand, Generic, are feeling uneasy because the fog outside the walls keeps getting thicker, and that can only mean one thing: a monster attack is on its way to the city. However, they likely don't need to be too concerned, since the walls have been completely restored and their army is prepared to fight at any time. At the same moment, Ulia, Mimico, and Ophelia have just located the glowing mage, only to discover he was killed by his own allies, as bringing him along would have risked attracting too much notice. Even so, Ulia is startled to see that the glow curse Kurt created is still active despite the man being dead, and if he can produce something like this with such little preparation, Ophelia suggests they might as well come clean with Kurt and request his assistance. After all, with his help, tracking down the assassins would likely be far faster. However, Ulia insists she doesn't want to drag Kurt into this, even though, realistically, she's already pulled him in quite deeply. At that very moment, the sound of alarm bells echoes across the city as the monsters begin their assault. General Allraid immediately orders his soldiers to cast light spells, illuminating the battlefield so they can finally see the creatures they're fighting against. To his dismay, he spots an enormous horde of skeletons advancing toward the walls. His men have no chance of repelling such a vast number at once, so he commands a group of soldiers to remain with him to fend off the skeletons, even if it means sacrificing their lives. Meanwhile, the others must prioritize evacuating as many citizens as they can. Allraid was fully prepared to give his life for his people. Yet, to his astonishment, just as the skeletons approached the wall, they all began to vanish. Allraid is confused by what's happening. Then he recalls that this part of the wall was restored by Kurt, and he thinks that Kurt must have played a role in this. The whole skeleton army ultimately vanishes. We then shift back to Marlefus, still confined within a magic circle. The bishop had forged a pact with this formidable demon to assassinate the princess. The advanced demon is now forcibly draining Marlefus' magical energy as a power source to summon monsters. Since the initial wave has already been defeated, the demon intends to continue summoning skeletons until Marlefus' mana and life force are in entirely depleted. In the city, Kurt has just learned of the monster assault and asks Ulia if they'll be alright. Ulia explains that monsters currently encircle the city on all fronts, and although the knights are working hard to devise a plan to counterattack, their options are limited in the current situation. The sole reason the city remains intact is that a significant portion of the skeletons were purified the moment they reached the walls. Kurt explains that he imbued the walls with enchantments during their repair, noting that such practices were commonplace in his village. He's taken aback that people here haven't been enchanting their walls. That said, Kurt only managed to enchant 2 of the city's 4 walls. If the skeletons target the unenchanted walls, they'll likely breach them quickly. Lies, thinking wisely, asks Kurt if he could create a weapon capable of eliminating all the skeletons. Kurt considers the idea. However, before he can respond, Ulia interjects, stating she must step out for a while. Before departing, she reminds Kurt and Lies that they are strictly forbidden from leaving the mansion under any circumstances. Lies doesn't mind at all. In fact, she's pleased, since this gives her a chance to spend some time alone with Kurt. Meanwhile, Ulia makes her way to the storage room and retrieves a box packed with magic crystals, all crafted by Kurt. Now armed with her hidden advantage, Ulia, Ophelia, and Mimico set off to find General Alraid and present their strategy to him. Alraid recognizes Ulia. After all, the 2 of them are longtime friends, but he's taken aback to find her in his city. Ulia explains her strategy to stop the skeleton horde. Since the undead appear to be emerging from some nearby ruins, she intends to infiltrate them and cut off their power source. But to pull this off, she needs Alraid and his soldiers to serve as a distraction, drawing the skeletons away so she can slip into the ruins undetected. Alraid expresses that the plan seems far too dangerous for him to approve. However, Ulia reassures him of its success, particularly because she possesses a secret weapon. She reveals one of the magic crystals crafted by Kurt, explaining that it holds sufficient power to purify an entire dungeon. Thus, it should be more than capable of demolishing the ruins and stopping the skeleton horde. Since Ulia is so determined, Alraid agrees to assist her, but only if she lets him accompany her on the mission. Ulia acknowledges Alraid's strength and capability, yet she still questions whether he's truly certain about joining her, given the extreme danger ahead. However, Alraid stands firm, since protecting the city is his responsibility, and he won't retreat from that duty. Besides, in his absence, Vice General Generic can lead the troops, and while the soldiers divert the monster's attention, Mimico and Ophelia will remain behind to help defend the city from any additional threats. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Kurt has just completed his gardening tasks when he begins reflecting on Liza's earlier comment about crafting a weapon. He makes his way to the forge he constructed and starts working on a project. In his village, the blacksmiths could effortlessly forge remarkable weapons. Though Kurt still lacks confidence in his own abilities, he is determined to be helpful to his friends, so he commits to doing all he can to create a quality weapon. At the same time, Ulia and Alraid are about to head out, but there's a horde of monsters blocking the exit, so she takes out one of the magic crystals and prepares to use it. She warns all the soldiers to close their eyes, and as soon as the crystal hits the monsters, a blinding flash of light wipes them all out. Ulia was aware of the power of Kurt's crystals, but she never realized they could purify such a large number of monsters simultaneously. Regardless, this plays to their advantage, so the soldiers set out to confront the next surge of monsters, while Ulia and Alraid make their way to the ruins. Back in the mansion, Kurt has just finished forging the blade, but after putting the finishing touches on it, his insecurities start getting to him. He was told that his blacksmithing skills were only B rank, so he doesn't believe a sword made by him could ever be good enough to fight monsters with. Not long after, Liz seeks out Kurt to ask what he'd like for dinner, but her attention is quickly drawn to the sword in his hands. She finds it beautiful. Kurt, noticing her admiration, offers it to her, saying she can keep it if she's that fond of it. However, he warns her to handle it with caution, as he's infused it with powerful magic. Liz thanks Kurt for the gift, but while Kurt may be oblivious when it comes to his own skills skills, he knows what a forced smile looks like. There's obviously something bothering Lies, and he would be lying if he said he hadn't noticed it before. So he asks Lies if someone is targeting her. She's amazed that Kurt has figured it out, but she acknowledges his accuracy and expresses regret for all the trouble she's caused. Kurt reassures her that an apology isn't necessary, yet Lies feels deep remorse, knowing that her actions keep everyone in danger. Indeed, at this very moment, Ulia is out there, putting her life on the line for Lies' sake. Kurt might have deduced that someone is pursuing Lies, but he remains unaware that she's a princess, or that her protection is crucial for the kingdom. All he understands is that Ulia has gone to address an issue at the nearby ruins, and he recalls a time when Golnova covered those ruins with graffiti, so he assumes Ulia is confronting a criminal who's been stalking Lies. His assumption couldn't be more wrong, but one thing remains true: Ulia is risking everything to protect Lies. Meanwhile, Kurt is left utterly helpless, aware that his pathetic combat skills make him useless in a real fight. The frustration eats at him when all he wants is to keep the people he cares about safe. Lies shares the same feeling. As she dislikes that others endanger themselves for her, she'd far prefer to battle and defend herself if she were able. Since she mentioned it, Kurt proposes that they both head out to track down the culprit on their own. Lies agrees with the idea, but she questions how they'll manage to leave the city, given that it's entirely surrounded by monsters at the moment. Kurt reassures her, saying that he's already come up with a perfect plan for their escape. Meanwhile, far out on the battlefield, Ulia feels a chill in her chest, sensing that something terrible is going to happen to Kurt. At the mansion, Lies is preparing to go into battle when she suddenly remembers she hasn't tested the enchanted blade Kurt gave her. Wondering what kind of magic it produces, she raises it above her head, but to her shock, nothing happens. Just then, someone comes up behind her. As she turns around, Lies is startled by what she sees, making it obvious that the magical sword had indeed done something. Meanwhile, Ulia and Auri continue fighting their way through the zombie horde. The diversion squad has almost wiped out the monsters here, but there are still plenty left, and Ulia has been using up her magic crystals at a rapid pace. She's nearly run out. Suddenly, Auri is stabbed in the stomach by one of the creatures, and as Ulia rushes to his aid, she's quickly surrounded by more monsters. With no time to grab another crystal, she won't be able to save herself. Fortunately, Cans and the others arrive just in time to rescue her. After hearing about what was happening, they rushed back as quickly as possible the moment they finished their mission. They soon locate the source where all the monsters are coming from, and Ulia uses one of the magic crystals to clear out every monster in the vicinity, allowing them to reach the ruins entrance. Ulia gives Auri some of Kurt's healing soup to help him recover from his injury, and once he's fully healed, she gets ready to move in. As more monsters begin emerging from the building, Cans and the others offer to take care of them so that Ulia and Auri can proceed without any backup. Meanwhile, deep within the ruins, Marlefus remains trapped, and at this pace, it's only a matter of time before she dies. Not that the demon gives it a second thought. However, what does concern him is how well the humans are holding their own against his monsters, performing far better than he anticipated. Ulia and Auri, in particular, have caught his attention, having already fought their way inside the ruins. Annoyed by their persistence, he decides to handle them himself. As Ulia and Auri sprint through the corridors, they stumble upon the source of the zombie infestation. Without hesitation, she hurls one of Kurt's magic crystals into the heart of the spawning ground, eradicating not only the undead, but also the dark magic fueling their creation. Ulia is amazed at how smoothly that went, but her relief is short-lived. Within moments, the demon materializes before them. Now, instead of fleeing, they have no choice but to face it head-on. Ulia lunges forward and strikes the demon with one of the magic crystals, using it as a weapon. While the crystal's power definitely connects, it has no effect, as the demon claims to have infinite health. Auri refuses to believe that and attempts to slash the demon across the stomach, but it doesn't work either. The wound heals almost instantly, not because the demon actually has infinite health, but because he's using Marlefus mana to regenerate, which is rapidly depleting her energy. The demon informs Auri and Ulia that they're quite skilled compared to most humans it has encountered, but in the end, they're no match for its power. The same applies to all their friends battling outside, desperately striving to defend the city, but ultimately destined to perish at the hands of a zombie legion. Auri declares that none of his men would ever be defeated by some lowly monster, but the demon responds that he can simply keep summoning more until they're eventually overwhelmed. Even the three fighting outside the ruins wouldn't survive the next wave he plans to unleash, but Ulia and Auri are determined not to let that happen. The two launch a simultaneous attack. Ulia slices off the demon's head, while Auri drives his blade into its heart. Yet the demon picks up his head and continues speaking as if nothing happened. He declares that he's going to slaughter all the knights and then hunt down the princess. But for amusement, he might let Ulia and Auri live long enough to watch Lies suffer a slow death. Ulia refuses to let that happen, but she finds herself at a loss, unsure of what to do next since none of her attacks are effective. Not even Kurt's magic crystals were enough to finish the demon off. Meanwhile, Marlefis has come to terms with her fate, having lost so much strength that even if she were freed from the magic circle, she wouldn't have the energy to escape. On top of that, due to the curse the bishop placed on her, she hasn't eaten in days and is now experiencing the worst hunger she's ever known. She finds herself wishing she could taste Kurt's cooking just once more before dying, and when she starts hearing Kurt's voice, she assumes it's nothing more than her imagination. But suddenly, Kurt emerges from a hole. He and Lies have just made their way into the chamber. Marlefis is amazed to see Kurt here, and even more shocked that he's accompanied by the princess. She assumes Kurt must have uncovered her role in the scheme to assassinate Lies, bringing the princess along to confront her. However, the truth is that Kurt had no idea Marlefis was even there until the moment he arrived. Kurt questions Marlefis, demanding if she's the one behind the attacks on Lies, but Marlefis clarifies that she was cast out by the church and manipulated into this situation by Bishop Tristan. Both Kurt and Lies hear her words, yet they interpret them in entirely different ways. Lies deduces that Tristan must be the mastermind orchestrating all the assassination attempts against her, while Kurt assumes Marlefis has been venting her frustration over her excommunication by scrawling graffiti everywhere. Marlefis doesn't understand what Kurt is talking about, and neither does Lies, but she still backs up everything Kurt says, even if it doesn't make any sense. Kurt then asks Marlefis whether she knows where Ulia is, but Marlefis has never heard of anyone by that name. However, she does recall spotting two adventurers heading in this direction, so they're probably on the floor just above this one. Kurt thanks her for the directions and gets ready to leave in search of Ulia, not giving Marlefis a second thought since he assumes the magic circle is nothing more than random graffiti. But Lies then asks him to help clean up the magic circle while she goes to look for Ulia herself. Kurt tries to stop her, worried it's too risky for her to head out alone, but she quickly reminds him that he gave her a magic sword, so she'll be perfectly fine on her own. Kurt finally agrees to let her leave, and during Liza's absence, he somehow locates a bucket and mop, preparing to begin cleaning. Marlefis considers him mad, as it's unthinkable to erase a magic circle with ordinary mop water, but Kurt's too stubborn to grasp the concept of impossible, so he nonchalantly sweeps the magic circle away. The moment the magic circle shatters, the demon senses his mana source has been disconnected. Now unable to sustain further damage, he swiftly evades Ulia and Auri's strikes, though neither of them understands the exact reason. The demon's sudden dodging makes one thing clear: he's afraid of taking hits now. Ulia grabs the final magic crystal from her bag, ready to finish off the demon once and for all, but before she can activate it, the demon smacks it from her grip. Now, without that crucial crystal, their odds of victory look dangerously low. Just as the demon prepares to unleash its full strength, Lies suddenly appears, shouting Ulysses' name. Lies has been the demon's main target from the very start, so the moment it sees her, it stabs her to death and laughs at how foolish she was to come here all alone. But to its shock, Lies' body suddenly dissolves into a swarm of butterflies, revealing that it was only a clone. The demon is in disbelief, certain it had struck down the real Lies, but it turns out that what it stabbed was merely an illusion summoned by the sword. Just as its name suggests, the sword creates illusions capable of fooling anyone, sometimes showing a chaotic mess of nonsense, and in this case, a flawless replica of Lies. The demon keeps trying to kill Lies again and again, but each time it lands a blow, it ends up being another illusion. Meanwhile, while the demon is distracted by all the fakes, the real Lies successfully slips past and reaches the magic crystal that Ulia had dropped. She then smashes it, and the resulting burst of energy wipes the demon out. And since the demon was the one who summoned all the zombies, now that he's gone, all the monsters vanish as well. The crisis is finally over, and everyone in the city can rest easy knowing that they are safe. Ulia is furious with Lies for risking herself like that. Lies says sorry for arriving without permission, but she couldn't just keep hiding while others were risking their lives to protect her. Even though Ulia is still upset, she knows she doesn't have the right to stay angry. After all, if Lies hadn't appeared, the demon would have ended both her and Auri. Auri wants to personally thank Lies for saving him, but she tells him it's not necessary because he fought even harder than she did. She thanks him for all his hard work in defending the city and promises to give him a reward for his brave actions. Meanwhile, Kurt has just managed to erase the last remnants of the magic circle, but even with it gone, Marlefist's curse still stops her from eating anything, meaning she'll eventually starve. Right then, Kurt hands her some rice balls. Sensing her hunger, Marlefist is grateful for the kindness, but if she tries to eat them, the curse will just make her throw it all back up. Nevertheless, she chooses to eat it anyway, wanting to enjoy the flavor of Kurt's cooking one final time before her death. Yet, as she takes a bite, she discovers she can eat it without issue, and moments later, the curse afflicting her stomach vanishes. It's not hard to deduce that Kurt's food is what healed her, but this marks the first moment Marlefist truly grasps the extent of Kurt's exceptional abilities. Now, she looks back on everything Kurt did for her and the rest of Flaming Dragon, and it finally hits her. Their party was only strong because Kurt was the one holding them together, so she genuinely apologizes for how she treated him. Marlefist is still awful, but at least she recognizes Kurt's strength now, and that's gotta mean something, though it doesn't stop her from being arrested, since two of Mimico's agents arrive to take Marlefist into custody for her involvement in the assassination attempt. Marlefist calls out to Kurt for help, but he simply promises to visit her in jail as often as she likes. Once Marlefist is taken away, Lies approaches Kurt to check if he's okay. Kurt says he's doing great, and if anything, he's more concerned about Ulia and the others who were fighting, but Lies reassures him they're all right thanks to the medicinal soup he prepared for them. After everyone makes it back from the battlefield, Kurt welcomes them to a grand feast at the mansion. However, once they all settle down to eat, the soldiers remain quiet, silently devouring their food. Kurt is concerned that the soldiers are only eating out of courtesy, as they don't appear to be enjoying themselves in the slightest, but Auri tells him he's completely mistaken. The reason everyone is so quiet is because the food is the most delicious thing they've ever had, and they're too busy trying to eat as much of it as they possibly can. Kurt feels happy knowing that they're enjoying his cooking, and while the others continue devouring their meals, Lies calls Auri over so she can introduce him to Kurt. Kurt remembers him as the foreman who oversaw the city wall repairs, but Lies quickly explains that Auri's responsibilities go far beyond construction. He's actually the one governing the entire city and its citizens. Suddenly, a burst of fireworks lights up the sky, leaving the whole crowd in awe of the breathtaking display. Kurt mentions he figured some entertainment would pair nicely with the meal, which is why he set up these fireworks ahead of time. As for the meal itself, Auri points out how all his wounds mysteriously healed after eating, but Kurt doesn't see why that's surprising. Back in his village, it was completely normal for someone to recover just by having a tasty meal, and they can't believe what they just heard. In a flashback to Kurt's younger years, when he lived in his hometown known as Haste Village, he walks up to Hildigard, who is occupied with her own affairs. Kurt inquires if she happens to be the daughter of the traveling merchant. At first, Hildigard pays no attention to Kurt, but as he persists, doing his utmost to get her attention, she eventually responds, explaining that her father has prohibited her from speaking to anyone from this village. It seems Hildigard's father believes the villagers here are strange, and if Hildigard spends time with them, she might pick up some of their oddness. Either way, Hildigard firmly tells Kurt that she's only talking to herself, and Kurt, going along with it, responds that he's also just talking to himself. That's how they introduce themselves, and before long, the two of them strike up a friendship. Soon after, Kurt takes Hildigard on a trip to the mountains riding his iron golem, aiming to show her some rainbow-colored flowers. Along the way, Hildigard spots some berries that look delicious, and she decides to eat some, only to discover that they're extremely poisonous. Luckily to her, even at such a young age, Kurt knows how to create an antidote. Acting fast, he gathers the rainbow-colored flowers, grinds them into a paste, mixes it with water, and places the mixture in his own mouth. But just before he can give the antidote to Hildigard, Kurt wakes up. He recalls that this incident took place 10 years ago. Now, he and his adventurer group are traveling to a village that has requested their assistance. Upon arrival, the village chief explains their issue. An unexpected drought has completely dried up their river. With no water, their crops are withering away. However, Ulia remains unconcerned. Looking closer at the map's details, she spots a huge reservoir in a neighboring village and notes that its waterways are linked to this village. However, as the village chief explains, the real issue lies with the neighboring village leader, who refuses to share the water, despite multiple attempts at negotiation. That's precisely why the chief has turned to the atelier for help, trusting in their influence and reputation to persuade the stubborn village head to cooperate and release the much-needed water. Once Ulia hears the village chief's explanation, she heads back to where her group was stationed, only to find Danzo waiting there. He tells her that the others have already gone up the hill. Apparently, the elderly bird keeper has hurt his back, and they've asked Kurt to assist him. Ulia figures they can manage that situation just fine, so without delay, she mounts her horse and sets off for the neighboring village, determined to negotiate for the water they desperately need. But upon her arrival, a woman drops to her knees and pleads with Ulia to assist their village with the water supply too. Ulia is confused by the situation and realizes that, at this point, all she can do is hope for rain. Right then, two villagers rush over in a panic and try to inform Ulia about something occurring at the top of the hill. Though they struggle to put what they witnessed into words, Ulia hurries to the spot and finds Cans and Sina gazing in awe at a massive lake. She's puzzled. If a lake this size existed here, why would the villagers report a water shortage? Sina can't really describe what just happened, so she simply tells Ulia that this lake wasn't here mere moments ago. As Kurt comes running toward them, Ulia begins to piece together what likely happened. She questions Kurt about why he's here, since Danzo had told her he was supposed to be looking after the birds. Kurt then explains that he noticed the old man's birds were desperately parched, so he rushed here and drew water up from an underground aquifer. Not long after, both village leaders arrive, expressing their gratitude to Ulia for rescuing them from disaster. Kurt, too, look at her in admiration, convinced she miraculously fixed everything within minutes, completely oblivious to the fact that he was the one who accidentally ended the crisis. With the mission complete, the group is now heading back, having been given several eggs as a token of gratitude. Kurt mentions that he's planning to use the eggs to cook something tasty later on. He then asks about Lies, and Ulia explains that Lies went to meet with the Lord of Tikkun to deliver a report regarding the monster attack from the other day. Later that day, Lies and Alraid are engaged in a conversation with Mangrave Tikkun. It seems that the Mangrave holds a rank comparable to that of a duke, and in an effort to strengthen his power, he's attempting to gain Lies' favor. Although Lies sees right through the Mangrave's intentions, she maintains a pleasant smile, reminding herself that she's here as the representative of the atelier master, not as the kingdom's princess. The Mangrave attempts to gather information about the atelier meister, aware that he was the one responsible for saving the town from the undead monster assault. However, Lies skillfully avoids his question, determined to keep Kurt from being dragged into political games. As their discussion continues, the Mangrave changes the subject to the town where the atelier master resides, noting that the place still hasn't been given a name. Lies explains that in order for a town to receive an official name, the kingdom must first assign a viceroy. Since the Mangrave holds the power to appoint viceroys within his territory, he subtly hints at his plan to name the atelier meister as the viceroy of the town. Lies instantly sees through his true motive, to bring Kurt under his personal authority. However, since Kurt isn't even aware yet that he's the atelier meister, Lies can't let this happen. Because of that, she explains to the Mangrave that a decision this significant can't be made by her alone. The Mangrave find this suspicious, especially considering she's not just the princess, but also the atelier's official representative. He remarks that he had assumed she would have at least some level of authority in matters like this. Lies is completely taken by surprise. She doesn't know how to respond and grows even more uneasy when the Mangrave shifts his attention to Alraid. The Mangrave then asks Alraid, who serves as the general of the town's knights, whether he has any objections to appointing the atelier meister as the viceroy. Lies can only hope he refuses, which would also confirm that Alraid is unaware of Kurt's true circumstances. So Alraid ends up agreeing to the proposal. Lies quickly steps in once more with another objection. This causes the Mangrave to ask if there's some kind of hidden flaw or defect that would make the atelier Meister unsuitable for the position. The remark deeply offends Lies, and unable to restrain herself, she declares that no one in the entire nation is more gifted than the atelier Meister. She ends up praising Kurt a little too much, which gives the Mangrave exactly the confirmation he was looking for. He confidently announces that the atelier Meister will, without a doubt, be appointed as the viceroy. Later that day, Lies comes back to the mansion with the news. Ulia is worried that they might be forced to present Kurt to everyone as the atelier master, which would be a problem since he himself doesn't even know he is the atelier master. She proposes finding someone else to pose as the atelier master just to settle the matter quickly. But that wouldn't work either, because all the knights have already met Kurt and know who he really is. So who would believe them if they brought in a replacement who's clearly not as skilled or powerful as he is? At first, Lies agrees to Ulysses' suggestion, but upon realizing it involves selecting someone else to impersonate Kurt, he shouts that it's unacceptable. No one else in that world could ever be like Kurt. She demands to know Kurt's whereabouts, and Ulia explains that Kurt is currently busy with child rearing. The moment Lies hears this, she freaks out. If the child isn't hers, she declares she'll adopt it and raise it alongside her beloved Kurt. Ulia is only joking with her. Kurt doesn't actually have a child, but he is caring for the egg they received as a gift from the village they visited, with the egg about to hatch at any moment, and knowing how Kurt always manages to surprise them. Ulia can't help but wonder just what kind of creature will emerge from this egg in the end. Right at that moment, Kurt shouts for Ulia, announcing that the egg has just hatched. Meanwhile, Mimiko is fed up with handling the numerous reports piled on her desk. She grumbles about it to Ophelia, who remarks that Mimiko's mask seems on the verge of slipping off. Discussing the workload on her desk, Ophelia informs her that Bishop Tristan has been murdered and his body was discovered. She proposes that the Poland church had him killed, needing someone to blame for the botched attempt at summoning the demon lord. Then, turning to Mimiko, Ophelia asks what she intends to do about Marlefus, whether she wants to kill her. As much as Mimiko might desire revenge, she remembers Kurt's words that he had promised to visit Marlefus in prison. With that in mind, killing her now might not be a good idea. At that moment, Mimiko receives a letter. It looks like she's just gotten some bad news. Meanwhile, back with Kurt, the egg has hatched into a little girl. Both Ulia and Lies are confused that the egg's hatchling has somehow become Kurt's daughter. Not long after, Ulia gathers everyone for a meeting, and the girl is sitting on Kurt's lap, calling him Papa, even though she just hatched. She appears to be around 3 years old. Ulia points out to Kurt that it's impossible for a child to come from an egg and warns him that the child might actually be a monster. Unfortunately, Ulia needs Kurt to hand the child over, but he asks what she plans to do with her. She replies that Ulia is going to dispose of the girl. Kurt refuses to let her go. He doesn't believe that such an innocent child could ever harm anyone. As Ulia tries to pull the girl away from him, Kurt pleads, saying he'll take full responsibility for raising the baby, but Ulia won't allow it. Then, in that very moment, the little girl looks at her, reaches out, and touches her face, calling her mama. Ulia instantly frees, already picturing a future with Kurt and the little girl as their first child. As if sensing what Ulia was thinking, Lies snaps her back to reality, clarifying that the little girl isn't her and Kurt's child. Ulia quickly denies even considering that. But before she can say more, Lies takes the child from her arms. The moment the girl is in Lies's hands, she reaches up, grabs Lies's face, and calls her mama as well. Lies's heart softens in an instant. Cans tell Ulia that there's no need to hurt the girl. He believes they can raise her properly. Even if she turns out to be a monster, they can help her grow into someone good. With few objections left, Ulia reluctantly agrees. Lies starts thinking about what they should name the girl. Since the girl called her mama, she suggests they use a combination of her and Kurt's names, and decides on the name Curais. But Ulia isn't having it. After all, the girl called her mama first, so she proposes the name Uculi instead. The two start arguing so loudly that they end up waking the girl. Confused, the girl asks why they're fighting. She then gently grabs both their hands, and suddenly everything calms down. In the end, they all agree that it doesn't matter whose name comes first or last in the girl's name anymore. Watching how the girl brings joy to the group and how everyone lights up around her, Kurt comes to realize that she might be the one who brings them all together, so he proposes the name Auri, which means Queen's area, the name is warmly received by the others, and the little girl beams with happiness upon hearing her new name. That night, as Ulia and Auri fall asleep, one of Mimico's subordinates arrives. In that moment, Ulia hands him a sample of Auri's hair and saliva, hoping it will reveal insights into Auri's true nature. The next day, Kurt builds a room in the house specifically for Auri. While Auri is thrilled, Ulia doesn't see it as a room at all. She sees it as a prison. Kurt designed it with no windows, and the walls are reinforced with mithril plates, making it impossible to open from the inside. On top of that, Ulia has made sure that Lies and Auri won't come into contact, at least not until she receives Mimico's report on the samples taken from Auri. Ulia has some matters to handle with Kurt, so she informs him that they need to head out. Auri wants to join them, but they tell her she can't come along. Ulia then asks Sina to look after Auri while they're away. As they make their way out, Ulia tells Kurt that they should finish things quickly so they can hurry back and spend time playing with Auri. Suddenly, Ulia hears Auri's voice coming from inside the carriage. She asks Kurt if he heard it too, and when he says he did, they both rush over to check. To their shock, they find Auri inside. They wonder if she secretly slipped away and followed them, but they can't bring her along on their journey, since everyone back home must be worried about her. The problem is, they don't have enough time to take her back themselves. Fortunately, Ulia spots one of Mimico's subordinates riding by on horseback. She tells Kurt to stay put while she goes to ask for assistance. As she steps away, Kurt reflects on what might be troubling her. He realizes that Ulia didn't say no to Auri because she dislikes her, but because she's worried about their safety. Kurt begins to question whether he made the right choice, and wonders what he'll do if Auri really does turn out to be a monster. Ulia returns and snaps him out of his thoughts. She already knows what's on his mind, and she admits that he's not wrong, but at the same time, no one truly knows what Auri might become someday, so neither of them is really mistaken. At that moment, an old man suddenly appears, urgently asking them to help save his village from the demon lord. Kurt and Auri cheerfully agree, promising to do their best. While Ulia is shocked by their enthusiasm, she tells them not to think about saving the world, as it isn't the job they came here for. A woman arrives there and apologizes, saying that the man is her father-in-law, who always wanted to be a fortune teller, so now he says unexpected things to strangers. Upon asking, the woman reveals that she is their client and thanks them for making time to do her job. However, she playfully says that she wasn't expecting the atelier to send a cute newlywed couple, and while pointing at Auri, says that the couple even has a cute child. This makes Kurt and Ulia shocked. However, Auri plays along and starts calling them Mama and Papa. Kurt wonders if Ulia is angry at the client for mistaking them as a couple, but Ulia blushes heavily. He starts overthinking, assuming that someone as beautiful as Ulia must be offended by someone calling him her husband, and he decides to compensate for this by working hard. To change the topic, Kurt asks the lady about the job, and she explains that the pigs on her farm haven't been eating their feed. Kurt thinks it might be because of heat exhaustion, as the weather has been extremely hot, and decides to prepare feed that cools down the animals. The lady is pleased to hear that and says that she will leave the pigs to Kurt's care as she takes her father-in-law for a walk. Kurt turns to see that Ulia is still frozen on the spot and wonders if she is really angry, so he tries to approach her but realizes that she is so mad that she can't even move an inch. He gives her some space and decides to prepare the feed. After providing the feed to the pigs, he turns to see that Ulia is still mumbling to herself that despite the age and height difference, it isn't unusual for them to have a child, as people don't have trouble imagining them together. She fully indulges in fantasies and panics completely, but then she calms herself down and says that she doesn't harbor any naughty feelings towards Kurt, as it is her job to protect him, but wonders why her heart hurts so much when she thinks of being away from him. Suddenly, a dragon appears in the sky, and Ulia takes out her sword to protect them, but before she can strike, Kurt stops her, saying that the dragon is friendly. Ulia still screams for Auri's safety, but the dragon simply eats the feed Kurt prepared, leaving Ulia worried. Kurt explains that in rural areas, it is common for dragons to show up for food, and Ulia is shocked by that, as she is from the city, where this never happens. Auri wonders if it is a really big dog, and Kurt explains that it is a child dragon. However, Ulia starts smelling blood, so she looks around and eventually finds an injured phantom guards there. She quickly realizes it is the guardian that protects Kurt and notices movement in the bushes nearby, so she quickly gets into a sword fight with the assailant. Kurt and Auri rush to the battle place, and the assailant jumps out, asking them to hand the child over to her. Ulia quickly asks if she knows Auri. However, Kurt thinks that she is a dragon hunter, but Ulia believes the situation is far more concerning than facing a simple dragon hunter. Ulia tells Kurt to leave, and he is about to protest when the dragon quickly picks up both Kurt and Auri and flies away with them. Ulia looks at them fondly, feeling proud that Kurt managed to tame a dragon, as it is extremely hard, and says that Kurt is indeed a S rank in everything other than combat. Ulia tries fighting with the dragon hunter, but is unable to compete, so she starts defending herself and asks the imposter if she came here for the baby dragon. However, the dragon hunter doesn't reply, saying that nothing matters as Ulia will be dead soon. She makes an attack that sends Ulysses' sword flying and then attacks her stomach, managing to leave a deep cut. Having no other choice, Ulia throws Kurt's magic crystals, which causes the ground to grow over the demon, making Urisha think that this is the end of the imposter. Even the lady and her father-in-law, who are oblivious about the fierce battle on their farm, feel the ground shake and wonder if it was landsliding, before the father-in-law dismisses it as a good omen. However, despite being buried under the ground, the demon survives and comes out. However, now the dragon hunter has grown horns and her nails have grown into bigger swords, which make Ulia realize that the dragon hunter is a demon with overwhelming magical power who hates mankind. She wonders why a demon would show up in front of a human. As for the past century, not even a single demon has done that. The demon is shocked too, as she wasn't expecting a move from a human big enough to dispel her transformation spell and reveal her true self. So she says that no wonder Ulia was able to defeat a demon lord. Ulia is worried after hearing that, as she realizes that the demon knows their past, which means she has been monitoring them. She also doesn't have any weapons left and wishes that Kurt will be able to make it to the frontier safely, as the people there would be able to protect him. She apologizes for not being the one to protect him, realizing that she is losing too much blood. But suddenly, Kurt shows up riding the dragon. Ulia screams in anger, but Kurt falls from a tree since he has zero combat skills, before explaining that he wants Ulia to escape with him. Suddenly, the ground rumbles as a large number of angry pigs rush towards them. However, instead of hitting them, they pass Ulia and Kurt, and they both get on one of the pigs to ride them. Ulia wonders if it is common for men to ride pigs in the countryside or jump into scary battles with demons, and Kurt denies that, saying he understands that he is doing a reckless thing, but then quickly adds that it is not reckless for a man to protect a woman who is precious to him. However, instead of making her happy, this makes her sad, as she thinks Kurt is only saying this because he considers Ulia a good friend and ally, but doesn't see her as a woman he might date. She wonders why it makes her sad, and why Liza's trying to make a move on Kurt makes her so angry. She finally admits to herself that she has fallen in love with Kurt, but before she can think more about it, a large firebomb attacks all the pigs, making them fly away in all directions. Only Kurt and Ulia are left when suddenly the demon throws the fireball at them as well. Ulia thanks Kurt for giving her the motivation for survival, as after her stomach wound, she had given up on life, and she takes Kurt's dagger. She uses a special technique called magic slashing, which is the art of cutting through an opponent's spell. Ulia admits that she has never been able to successfully perform this act before, but also accepts that she has no other option right now. In a moment of desperation, she tries it, but fails. Suddenly, Auri shows up out of nowhere and clings to Ulia, calling her mama, and the spell somehow gets dispelled. The demon is exhausted, and Ulia wonders what just happened. She eventually reaches the conclusion that the demon dispelled her own attack, but wonders why she would do that. Ulia realizes that the child the demon is looking for is Auri, and Ulia is about to confront the demon, but feels so weak that she falls down. The demon escapes because she is exhausted, and Kurt gives medicine to Ulia. He holds her and asks if she is in pain, or if she needs anything else, and Ulia closes her eyes, deciding to indulge in the moment for a little. But Auri is too worried and starts caressing Ulysses' face, impatiently asking if she is okay. So Ulia assures them both that she is fine. However, Ulia suddenly thinks of how Auri got here, and Kurt explains that she didn't fly or run there, but suddenly suddenly appeared, seemingly as if she used teleportation magic. Ulia thinks of how many magicians have been working to perfect the teleportation skill, but it hasn't been completed yet. Anyone who inherently has teleportation skills can teleport to any place where a teleportation stone has been established. She quickly asks Auri to show the magic again, but Auri says she can no longer do it. Ulia wonders how that happened and asks Kurt if he knows something, but their thoughts are disturbed by the pigs who are lying on the ground. They quickly decide to herd them back to the farm, and Auri and Kurt start healing the pigs. Once the lady returns, she is happy to see that all of the pigs seem livelier and thanks Ulia. Before asking where Kurt is, Ulia explains that Kurt knows someone from the neighboring farm and has gone to greet them, when in reality, he is flying somewhere on his newly tamed dragon. After dealing with the client, as Ulia and Auri head back, Auri asks if Ulia is exhausted, and Ulia affectionately tells her that she is fine because of Auri. She asks Auri if she popped the fireball earlier, and Auri denies doing that, so Ulia concludes that the demon protected Auri. She decides to investigate the entire thing further, including Auri's newfound powers and the reason why the demon wanted her. Her train of thought is interrupted by Kurt waving at them from afar as he rides the dragon. He comes down and shows that he has captured the demon. He explains in a flashback that the dragon had smelled something, so Kurt landed there and saw a badly injured demon lying there. He realizes that she is alive and wonders what to do next, but refusing to be heartless, he decides to make medicine for her. She calls him a fool for saving her, but he says that he is saving her because she didn't kill Ulia or Auri by dispelling her spell at the last moment. Kurt throws the medicine toward her, and the demon takes it, but right after taking it, she feels faint. Kurt then reveals that, because he is aware of his combat skill, he added anesthesia to the medicine, which would keep her asleep for about 3 days. He still believes that she is just a dragon hunter, and tells her not to hurt humans again, but then wonders if she even understands him, as she isn't the same as Hildigard. However, the moment Kurt mentions that name, the demon is shocked to hear it, but before the connection between her and Hildigard can be revealed, the medicine takes effect, and the demon falls unconscious. They finally reach, and Ulia comments on how a single day felt as long as an entire hectic week, while Kurt tells Auri to go to Sina and others, as they must be worried about her. Lies and Sina quickly show up and hug Auri, while a charming-looking man shows up and asks them how the job was. Ulia wonders who that guy is, so Lies explains that this man is their new atelier master. The charming-looking man introduces himself as Rikudo, saying he was looking forward to meeting the people of the atelier, and Kurt, fascinated by the appearance of the atelier master, introduces himself. Rikudo says he is well aware of Kurt and thanks him for setting up such an amazing atelier before saying that he hopes Kurt will continue to support the atelier, to which Kurt enthusiastically agrees. Ulia, however, is skeptical of the atelier meister, thinking that there is no way this man is the master, and quickly tells Kurt to prepare the meal. Kurt excitedly says that he will prepare a feast tonight and hurries upstairs. Ulia tells Sina to take care of Auri, and is about to give orders to Rikudo and Lies, but suddenly, Rikudo corners Ulia against the carriage. Ulia, feeling angry with the invasion of her space, tries to kick Rikudo in the groin, but the kick passes right through Rikudo as if he is a ghost. Ulia is shocked for a second, before looking at Lies and realizing what is going on. Lies pulls out her sword, smiling politely and saying that Ulia caught her too quickly. Ulia is still surprised by the fact that Lies can make an illusion of someone who doesn't exist, so Lies explains that this is how she imagines a 20-year-old Kurt would look. Suddenly, Rikudo turns into many butterflies, and a letter from Mimiko drops in his place, in which she says that she will return in 3 days with a detailed report on Auri. 3 days later, Mimiko returns and everyone surrounds her, ready to hear about the result of the investigation. But Mimiko tells them that their general conclusion about the situation is that they don't know anything about Auri. The whole group is shocked, and Ulia tells Mimiko to elaborate her answer. So Mimiko tells them that the hair and saliva sample of Auri reveal that she is fully human. However, some traces of magic crystals were found in Auri's nails, which is impossible to find in humans. She explains that it had traces of spatial magic crystals that were used in the Age of Creation, but now it is a lost magic that no one can use. Kurt wonders if Auri is a monster, but Mimiko tells him that they are unsure, as no one knows what Akiri is because she talks, eats, and looks like a human, but she has magic in her body. Mimiko says that she is terrified by the idea of someone like that being under the same roof as them and suggests they use sealing magic to ensure Akiri can never use her teleportation powers again, and then to safeguard her in a lab. However, Kurt immediately disagrees, which ends in Mimiko asking his rationale behind letting Akiri stay. Kurt asks Mimiko if she is scared of him, and Mimiko clearly says that she isn't afraid of him, so he asks if this is because she knows he will not attack her, and Mimiko agrees, saying Kurt is a friend that she trusts. Kurt says that this is the same reason why he wants to protect Akiri, as he feels safe with her, even though she isn't human. He says that despite being so young, Akiri went to check up on the demon because she was worried about her, which proves that Akiri has a kind heart. He clearly says that he won't let anyone take Akiri away from them, and Ulia agrees, saying that Akiri teleported to save her life. Ulia adds that if Mimiko can't prove that Akiri is a human, she also can't prove that Akiri is a monster. Lies also jumps in to say that she has faith in Akiri, who is like a daughter to her. Mimiko smiles and tells them to take care of Akiri. Next, they start to discuss the demon that attacked them, so Kurt requests that Mimiko not throw the demon into the prison, before taking Mimiko to the demon confined in the basement. Mimiko realizes that Kurt doesn't know that demons are natural enemies of humans, and that she would be facing worse than just prison, so she injects a chemical that wakes up the demon. Mimiko quickly asks the demon if she can speak, and the demon tells her that she is a demon warrior. The demon suddenly uses fire magic at Mimiko. However, Mimiko quickly tells her that it's all useless, as the room she is confined in seals all magic. Mimiko asks her if she has any allies nearby, but the demon refuses to reply, saying that a loser only answers to the victor, suggesting that she will only give answers to Kurt. Upon Mimiko's orders, Ulia brings Kurt in, and Kurt quickly asks about the demon's health, who replies that she is fine other than her tied hands. Kurt apologizes for not being allowed to free her, but the demon cuts him, and asks that he mentioned Hildigard earlier, so how does he know her? Kurt explains that Hildigard is the daughter of a traitor who often comes to his village, and that she used to have horns as well, so Kurt wondered if the two knew each other. The demon asks if Hildigard was wearing a griffin crest, and Kurt reaffirms that she was. This makes the demon's eyes light up, as she says that she must save Lady Hildigard. Kurt asks what she means by saving her, so the demon explains that Lady Hildigard is being held captive beneath Margrave Tacon's castle, which shocks them all. Kurt quickly wonders why anyone would do that, and asks Ulia to join him in saving Hildigard. However, Ulia tells Kurt to first get answers out of the demon, and asks her that if she wanted to save Hildigard, why did she come and attack Akiri? The demon explains that while she was investigating Margrave, she found that they were investigating the atelier, when suddenly Akiri appeared in a random carriage, which made the demon believe that if she had Akiri's teleportation powers, she would be able to save Lady Hildigard. Kurt quickly agrees, so Ulia scolds him for believing everything the demon says without any proof. However, the demon tells them to look at her pendant, which Kurt quickly recognizes as Hildigard's. The demon adds that she received it from Hildigard and only stopped her attack because Kurt's dagger had the same griffin, and Kurt affirms that the dagger was a gift from Hildigard. Mimiko eventually believes her story and tells her that they will go to save Hildigard. However, if the demon tries to run away or die in the cell, Hildigard won't be saved, so Kurt requests the demon to stay there. The demon finally tells Kurt that her name is Solflare, and Kurt is about to give a speech on how pleased he is to meet her, when suddenly Akiri teleports between the two, shocking everyone. Akiri says that she accidentally did whoosh again, which caused her to teleport here. Kurt eventually tells Mimiko that he doesn't know how to save Hildigard, so Mimiko tells him not to worry, as she will help him. Sometime later, Mimiko presents the blueprint of the Margrave mansion, and Ulia is surprised that Mimiko was able to find them in such a short time. Mimiko explains that Margrave Tacon, who is the main head of the family, is 47 and his wife died 10 years ago, giving birth to his eldest daughter, Famil, who also died last year because of a disease. She explains that in the mansion, there is a room where only Margrave Tacon is allowed to enter, and people have witnessed him taking food to that room as well. Solflare confirms that she tried opening that room, but was unable to. Mimiko says that even for an expert treasure hunter, it will take him a long time to open that room. So Lies suggests suggests that they make him open the room for them. She says that she will create an illusion of a thief and send him into the room, so it appears to others that a thief has managed to breach the property, so he will have no choice but to open it. Mimiko says they will need to come up with a plan, and Lies suggests using Rikudo as their thief for the mission, since the Margrave is hosting a festival next week, during which their team will be studying the local market. Meanwhile, both Ulia and Lies internally think about how romantic it would be to go on a date with Kurt at the festival. They quickly play rock, paper, scissors and decide that Lies will spend time with Kurt on the first day of the festival, while Ulia will be alone with him on the second day. As they set off on the adventure, Rikudo mentions how Auri joined them as well, and Kurt apologizes, saying that she insisted on joining. When Kurt apologizes for dragging Rikudo into this mess, Rikudo says that he doesn't want anyone from the royal family to do such deeds, as it makes all the royals, including Rikudo, look bad. Kurt is shocked and asks if Rikudo is a royal, which also makes Ulia and Lies shocked, so Rikudo asks Kurt to keep it a secret. Once they reach the inn, Ulia tells Kurt to take care of Lies and Auri tomorrow, and Kurt says he wants to help Ulia investigate Takon instead of roaming in the festival. However, Lies protests, saying he needs to go with her. Lies also mentions that Auri has been looking forward to enjoying the festival with her papa, so Kurt hesitantly agrees. The next day, during the festival, they watch plays, buy drinks, and share them, something that makes Lies happy because of the indirect kiss. When Kurt says he's going to throw away the empty fruit, Lies angrily tells him that she wants to cherish it for the rest of her life. Kurt asks if it's worth any money, but Lies quickly covers up by saying she wants to keep the fruit as a sample for her country. Lies asks him that because he traveled a lot when he was an adventurer, he must have seen a lot of festivals, but Kurt reveals that he was always either guarding the equipment or the vehicle, so he was never able to enjoy any festival. He tells Lies not to feel bad about him, but mentions that a part of him always wanted to enjoy it, so Lies holds his hand and tells him that the three of them will enjoy the festival today. At that moment, she thinks to herself that today, she will confess her love to him. After that, they play games like balancing beans, archery, and eat a lot of delicious food. Around evening, Lies tells him that she wants to get away from the crowd, so they head to a quiet park, and Lies decides that this is the place where she will confess. She thinks of how Kurt has enjoyed today, so because of the good mood, he might realize that she has been with him during this happy moment. However, as she approaches him, she notices the serious look on his face, as he is looking at the Takon mansion where Hildigard is being held captive. Lies freaks out because she forgot how close the park is to the mansion. Lies asks him if he is worried about Hildigard, and he tells her that everyone assured him not to worry, but it hurts him that he isn't of any help in saving her. Lies tells him that he freed her from her curse, made an impressive atelier, and even makes delicious food for everyone, but it doesn't uplift him, as he thinks anyone would have easily done these things. She thinks of telling him how untrue that is, but realizes that he won't take that seriously, so instead she tells him that every single person from the atelier adores him, and is only here to save Hildigard because they want to do something for him. This makes Kurt teary, and he says that he likes all of them a lot too. As the mood turns better, Auri calls for Kurt, saying that she is hungry. Lies thinks to herself that it was such a good day to confess, but for now, seeing Kurt genuinely smile is enough. She heads to Kurt and Auri, who are playing in the park, and promises to confess the next time. Last time, Ulysses' sword was broken during the fight with the demon, so she asked Kurt to forge a new one for her. So before the festival kicked off, she reached out to a renowned dwarven blacksmith, so they head out to the mine. It doesn't take long for Kurt to stumble upon some mithril and adamantite just lying around, and the dwarf is stunned by how effortlessly Kurt found them. But when it's time to start forging the sword, the dwarf refuses to believe Kurt can actually pull it off like this. Mithril is known for being incredibly hard to work with, yet Kurt is melting it down in a pot like it's the easiest thing in the world. Despite his doubts, he still agrees to let Kurt use his forge, and to his amazement, Kurt crafts a masterpiece of a blade in a few hours. The blacksmith can't believe, but after processing what just happened, he resolves to set out on a journey to refine his blacksmithing skills, hoping to one day reach Kurt's level. Ulia was overjoyed to receive the sword. Now, back to the present, it's finally time for her date with him. As the second day of the festival kicks off, Kurt and Ulia head out into town together. Since Auri is still sleeping sleeping from all the excitement yesterday, they agreed to let her sleep a bit more. This turns out perfect for Ulia, as it means she gets Kurt all to herself, and she's already got a whole list of fun places she wants to take him. But suddenly, she hears a loud disturbance. When she glances over, she spots a group of delinquents robbing a store. Normally, Ulia wouldn't care at all about some shop getting robbed, especially if it means interrupting her precious time with Kurt, so she deliberately acts like she didn't notice. However, before she even realizes what's happening, Kurt has already rushed off to help the family in distress. Kurt steps up to the stall and demands the thugs stop their actions right away. They tell him to stay out of it, but Kurt presses them to explain the situation. The ruffians say that they hate the taste of this guy's meat buns, so they're wrecking the place to spare others from suffering through such garbage. Kurt finds it disrespectful to dismiss someone's effort like that, so he grabs one of the buns and offers to pay for it. After taking a bite, he praises the man's skill, pointing out the quality of the meat and the care put into making it. The ruffians aren't pleased with Kurt spoiling their fun, so the shorter one pushes him, and with no fighting skills, Kurt staggers backward. At this moment, Ulia chooses to intervene, informing the thugs that Kurt is employed at an atelier. Upon hearing this, the thugs begin to reconsider their actions, aware of the significant influence ateliers wield in the kingdom, and they quickly flee. Kurt immediately checks on the injured man and realizes the thugs have fractured several of his bones. Now he's genuinely concerned. Ulia suggests that a few gulps of Kurt's special medicine would easily mend broken bones, but Kurt, ever convinced his creations are just average, refuses to rely on it. Instead, he insists on rushing the man to a proper hospital, dashing off before Ulia can even argue. Ulia can't help but feel crushed. This was supposed to be their special day, and now it's falling apart. But the girl starts to cry, making her wonder if she's focusing on the wrong problem. That's when she spots one of Mimico's agents pretending to sell spineless cactus. Figuring she might have useful intel, Ulia decides to approach her. The agent informs Ulia about a cooking contest set to take place later this afternoon, which the meat bun stall intended to join. However, Gargel Restaurant, the current champion, is determined to keep its title as the top food stall and hired thugs to sabotage their stall. Ulia understands that her date has been ruined due to the selfishness of Gargel Restaurant, but since they've already dealt with the thugs, she feels confident they can resume their date once Kurt comes back. However, when Kurt finally returns, he informs Ulia that the man will need to stay in the hospital until the next day, so he requested Kurt to take care of his shop and daughter in the meantime. Ulia's hopes for a normal date are completely shattered, so she chooses to turn her frustration into anger and vows to destroy the Gargel Restaurant for messing up her plans. Kurt is totally confused by what she means, so she explains that there's going to be a cooking competition later that day, and she wants to help the bun stall come out on top. However, the little girl explains that winning the competition is impossible now. The thugs threw out all the meat bun fillings, leaving nothing to sell, much less submit for the contest. Ulia reassures her, saying everything will be fine because she and Kurt are there to help. Ulia turns to Kurt and asks if he can prepare some tasty meat buns, and since it's Kurt, he's capable. However, Kurt won't be the one actually making them, as his skill would make them too perfect. Instead, Ulia decides that Kurt should teach Luna how to make them properly, ensuring she can keep baking the buns even after they leave. Luna vows to put in her best effort to make her father proud, and with that, Ulia stands up and declares they're going to recreate those buns and take home the competition's victory. But before anything else, they'll need to gather new ingredients, so she asks Kurt if there's anything he wants her to pick up. Kurt tells her to buy some spineless cactus from the nearby stalls, and after that, to grab the bag of beans he won at the festival the day before. Meanwhile, he says he'll start digging right here and get to work. Ulia was completely fine with the plan, until Kurt mentioned digging holes. She quickly points out that the plaza is the Lord's property, but Kurt brushes it off, saying he can dig so quickly that nobody will even notice. That, however, wasn't Ulysses' main concern. When Kurt casually asks where he can find a shovel, she firmly reminds him that he needs to ask for permission before starting any construction work on land that isn't his. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Gargel is serving the cooking contest judges one of his delicious donuts, and they're showering him with praise for the incredible flavor. Gargel is feeling confident, convinced he's going to win this year's contest, especially since he sort of bribed the judges ahead of of time and went to great lengths to eliminate his competition. But his confidence quickly fades when he overhears people talking about some incredible buns they just tried. And now, he's confused. Determined to figure out what's happening, he marches over to investigate. He remembers ordering those thugs to wreck the bun stall. Yet to his shock, not only is the stall still standing, but it's thriving more than before. Even stranger, there's some kind of new hot spring set up beside it, and Gargil has no clue when that was constructed. Before long, the judges make their way to the stall. Drawn by all the buzz surrounding these buns, Gargil starts sweating. He can't let them try those buns, so he argues that the fillings must be spoiled since they're pitch black inside. But Luna steps forward with a fresh plate of buns for the judges. She admits that yes, the filling is dark, but that doesn't mean it isn't delicious. She reveals the secret. The rich, black filling is made from boiled beans and sweetened with spineless cactus nectar, creating a perfect balance of sweetness. Her lively description piques the judges' curiosity, making them eager to sample the buns, and the moment they taste them, they understand why everyone raves about them. As an extra perk, the buns are priced at just 1 copper each, despite their delicious flavor. At that moment, Gargil decides to taste one himself and discovers that they truly are that remarkable. The judges inquire if there's a special trick behind the buns being so fluffy, prompting Ulia to step in and explain that the new chef may have gone a bit overboard with the preparation. According to him, to achieve the best results, the buns should be boiled in water that contains baking soda, which is why they used water sourced directly from the hot spring. Gargil refuses to believe this and accuses Ulia of making it up, insisting there's no hot spring in the area, but Ulia responds that the new chef actually dug one earlier today. Gargil remains skeptical, until Ulia casually mentions that Kurt is now affiliated with the new atelier, but that only fuels his frustration. Furious that Kurt and Ulia sabotaged his shot at winning the cooking contest, he tells that he'll report them for unauthorized construction on Tacon's land. After all, even atelier members aren't above the law. Ulia, however, anticipated this, which is exactly why she sent lies to secure Tacon's personal approval beforehand. And with the third princess officially backing the stall, there's nothing Gargil can do to stop them, although they had to agree to surrender the hot spring to city management as part of the deal. So Kurt turned it into a foot bath as a new tourist attraction. Gargil is losing his mind because it shouldn't be possible for a small bun stall to have so many connections. But Gargil isn't done yet. He still has a final card to play. Grabbing one of the judges, he quietly reminds him of the bribe he's owed if he helps Gargil secure the win. These buns are just too good to deny, so the judge tells Gargil to keep his money. There's no chance he's giving these buns a bad review. Just then, Gargil spots the thugs he hired hiding around the corner, so he runs up to them and says they should hurry up and destroy the stall. He even promises to bail them out if they get thrown in jail. But all of a sudden, he hears a girl's voice, and the thugs fade away to reveal lies. The real thugs have already been arrested and thrown in jail for destruction of property, and Gargil has admitted to hiring them to commit all that destruction. But that by itself wouldn't be enough to put him behind bars for long. Luckily, Ulia did some investigating and discovered that Gargil has been supplying ingredients to Tacon's personal chef, and he's been lacing the food with drugs to make people addicted. That's definitely illegal, which means they now have full grounds to take him into custody. Gargil realizes that he has been caught, but he refuses to go down like this, so he pulls out a knife and lunges at Lies so he can escape. That doesn't go so well for him, and within seconds he is tackled to the ground by 2 of Mimico's agents. Ulia then tells him he just made things a lot worse for himself, because Lies over here is the 3rd princess, and attacking her just added treason to his charges. In the end, Gargil gets hauled off, and it's wild to realize this whole mess started just because he was desperate to win some meaningless competition. With Gargil finally out of the picture, Lies can't resist teasing Ulia about her ruined date with Kurt, but Ulia doesn't mind. Seeing Luna and Kurt happy today was more than enough for her. Later that evening, Tacon receives the news of Gargil's arrest, and he is stunned. After all, Gargil had been his castle's sole food provider. Desperate to bail him out, Tacon demands to know what exactly Gargil did wrong, but his assistant informs that Gargil had the audacity to attack Princess Lies at the festival. So, he explains there's absolutely nothing Tacon can do to fix it. Reluctantly, Tacon accepts that freeing Gargil is impossible. But now he faces another crisis. Princess Lies is expected for tea tomorrow, and with his main supplier locked up, how is he supposed to properly host her? Just as panic sets in, his assistant offers a solution. Why not hire that little bun stall everyone was talking about at the festival? After all, their treats were the talk of the event, and they'd make perfect snacks for the royal visit. With no other options, Tacon agrees to hire the bun stall as his temporary food supplier for Liza's important visit. But Liza's recent behavior has been puzzling him. She unexpectedly showed up earlier to personally request a building permit, then casually mentioned she'd return tomorrow for tea along with the entire atelier. Tacon fears that she may have uncovered his true intentions here, but that's irrelevant as long as he can meet the atelier and express his deepest desire. The following morning, Lies and the others are preparing for their mission to save Hildigard, aiming to reach the secret room behind the kitchen. They aren't certain Hildigard is there, but it's their strongest assumption. Kurt announces he'll be assisting Luna with her stall today after she landed a massive order, but he assures them it won't interfere with their plans. After he leaves, Lies and Ulia review the scheme. Lies will craft an illusion of herself and Rakuto to meet Tacon, manipulating him into unlocking the hidden chamber so they can discover its secrets. Or at least, that was supposed to be how it played out. However, their plans take an unexpected turn when one of Mimiko's spies intercepts them with urgent news. Kurt and Luna have been hired by Tacon as temporary chefs for today's tea party, and Kurt is already working in the kitchen, which happens to be right beside the very secret room they need to access. Early that morning, Kurt is excitedly helping Luna make buns. When Luna is shocked by the arrival of royal guards, they inform Kurt that their master, Margrave Tacon, has ordered buns from their shop and wants them to prepare 100 of them immediately. They also tell them that they want the head chef to accompany them to the castle, and Luna gets worried as the opening time of the shop is near, so she can't afford to leave. Having no other option, Kurt decides to make the buns and take them to the castle. He gives the samples to the guards while they wait for the order to be made, and they all feel like they are in heaven after eating them. When all the buns are prepared, Luna, Kurt, and Auri head to the guards, but find them asleep while standing, and Kurt comments on how they must be really tired to fall asleep while standing. But the guards say that their fatigue from the festival has vanished in a flash. Kurt tells them that it's common to feel refreshed after having a sweet treat, and they all head to the castle, while Luna waves them goodbye. While walking, Kurt thinks how lucky full moon buns are to get an order from the lord of the town, but midway realizes that Margrave Tacon is the lord of this town. As he enters the castle, he thinks of how this is the place where Hildigard is held captive and feels sad that he isn't able to participate in rescuing her. He meets Tacon's assistant, who explains that these buns will be served to the third princess, and Kurt worriedly says that he made the buns in a hurry, as he was told that this is an urgent order. He wonders if he will get arrested for disrespect if the princess doesn't like it, but the assistant tells him not to worry and asks him to stay in the kitchen till the meeting is over, because Tacon or the princess might call for the chef, so Kurt agrees to stay. In the kitchen, Kurt notices the door that leads to the room where Hildigard is held and looks at it worriedly. On the other hand, the meeting begins, and Tacon mentions how he heard that a chef was rude to Princess Lies, but Lies tells him not to worry as long as he wasn't the one who sent the chef. Tacon is taken aback and quickly tells her that he would never want to harm a princess. Lies laughs at her own joke, and Tacon joins her. Ulia guards the door and hopes that Kurt won't do anything reckless to disrupt their plan. She wishes she could go see Kurt in the kitchen, but decides against it as she cannot move away from the door even for a second, for the sake of Liza's protection. Meanwhile, Kurt sits in the empty kitchen, thinking that the path is clear and he could easily enter that room if he tried. But then he tells himself that he shouldn't do anything without informing the team. However, it keeps bothering him, and eventually Auri asks him if he's okay. He tells her that one of his friends might be behind that door, but it's locked tightly, and he can't go in there, so he is worried about his friend. Auri smiles brightly and says that she will take Kurt to his friend, and before Kurt can understand what she means, she holds him tightly and teleports him to the other side of the locked door. She excitedly tells him that now they can look for Kurt's friend, and Kurt is fascinated that he can teleport with Auri as long as she holds him. Kurt realizes that he shouldn't be here without the atelier knowing, so he asks Auri to teleport them back. But Auri tells him that she can't do it, and Kurt remembers how she said she couldn't teleport before, which must mean that she can't teleport immediately after doing it once. Auri starts getting teary, so Kurt comforts her by saying that they will look for his friends as they are already here. Suddenly, they hear a woman's voice asking if someone is here, and Kurt wonders if it's Hildigard, so he quickly uses a technique to open the door, only to find an old woman inside. On the other side, Tone says that he wants to appoint Rikudo as the viceroy, but Rikudo says that he wants to discuss a few things alone with him first, so Liza's clone steps out. Once Liza leaves, Rikudo asks what Tone expects from him, and Tone questions if Rikudo believes in eternal youth. Meanwhile, the old woman welcomes them, and Auri asks the woman if she is sick. The woman confirms, saying she has had very little appetite, so Auri offers her a bun, saying her papa made it. After a bite, the woman is delighted by how tasty the buns are, but Kurt questions why she is pretending to be an old lady when her age in reality isn't much. This shocks the old woman, and she asks Kurt if he is a famous mage, as he was able to guess her real age and break the lock easily. However, Kurt quickly refuses being a famous mage. The woman tells him that Hildigard is held captive right beneath this room and asks for help from Kurt. Having nothing to dig with, Kurt says he will make a shovel out of the hardened bread, but the woman tells him to calm down, as they have an elevator that can take them to the basement. On the other hand, Tone tells Rikudo that there are a few races that live far longer than humans, such as elves and demons. He explains that there have been experiments where the lifespans of people were increased by transplanting cells from such creatures into humans, but Rikudo says that those experiments failed because of their gruesome side effects, which led to such transplants being banned by national law. Tone tells Rikudo that his atelier has made exceptional medicine before, so they can make the eternal youth pill without side effects as well. Rikudo says that it's absurd for Tone to bring up such an unusual request in the very first meeting, as it is both immoral and illegal to do such experiments, and asks why Tone is in a rush to create that medicine. This makes Tone shocked, but he doesn't share the reason, so Liza decides she won't push more. To proceed with the plan, Liza creates the illusion of a thief, and Ulia quickly informs Tone that thieves have broken in. She explains that they rushed to the kitchen like they were looking for someone. Tone orders all of them, including Ulia, to stay in the room while he rushes downstairs, and an invisible Liza follows him. However, when he opens the door, he screams for Famil, wondering if she is okay. Liza is shocked and questions why he is calling the name of his dead daughter, but he heads downstairs to the basement in a hurry. Liza finds a hair on the bed and uses her long sense technique, which heightens her sense of smell, and she is shocked to smell Kurt nearby. She decides to go back to Ulia and inform her about Famil's room, which is an unexpected addition to their plan. Downstairs, Kurt and Famil stand in front of Hildigard's door, and Kurt mentally apologizes to his team for acting alone. He goes inside to find Hildigard chained to a magical circle on the wall, and Kurt is happy to see that Hildigard remembers him from 10 years ago when she visited his village. Famil lowers down the chains, and Kurt announces that he is here to save her. He bombards her with questions, asking if she is hurt, before realizing that she hasn't changed one bit since he last saw her. He tells her that she hasn't changed, and she punches him, saying that the medicine he fed her 10 years ago is the reason why she hasn't grown at all. He tells her that he might have messed up the ratio of rainbow flower, which must have made Hildigard stay the same for the past 10 years. She angrily tells him that after that, he moved out of the village, so she had no way to locate him. She asks him to compensate for the damage he did and hits him more, but Auri jumps in, telling Hildigard not to hurt her papa. This makes Hildigard even angrier, as she accuses him of having children while stopping her growth. So Kurt explains that Auri was born from a waterfowl's egg. She is shocked, but accepts that anything is possible when it comes to Kurt and tells him that she's hungry, so Kurt offers her some hard bread. Famil, seeing this scene from behind, jumps in to ask if Hildigard's eternal youth is because of a medicine Kurt made, and Hildigard agrees. Hildigard asks Kurt if he can make the same medicine again, and he tells her that he hasn't seen a rainbow flower since then, so he can't make one. Hildigard apologizes for not being of any help to Famil, and Kurt gets shocked on hearing her name. He quickly asks her if he is Tacon's dead daughter, and she explains that because she has a disease that makes her age rapidly, story. Her father lied to everyone that she died from the disease and now keeps her hidden and locked in a room. Kurt, however, is still unable to understand the real reason why Tacon kidnapped Hildigard. He remembers asking the security team for reasons for Hildigard's imprisonment, and they told him that some people are crazy. Soon Kurt realizes that Famil ages rapidly, while Hildigard doesn't age, but Kurt is unable to connect the dots. Tacon shows up there and is glad that Famil is safe, but Kurt quickly tells him that he is doing the wrong thing. Kurt tells him that everyone has a different perspective, but that doesn't mean he stoops low for it. Tacon says that Kurt doesn't understand him, but Kurt says that he does understand because he also has a daughter. He explains that he loves Auri, but all children are supposed to grow up. He says that Tacon grieved Famil's rapid aging and chose a never-aging Hildigard. Because of the pain, Famil drank the medicine that made her look like an old woman. He then adds that Tacon kidnapped Hildigard so he could make her his daughter instead of the old Famil. Hildigard shakes her head, calling Kurt an idiot. Everyone tells him that it isn't the case, and even Tacon calls it nonsense. But Kurt finishes his story by saying that Tacon did all this because he is a pedophile. Tacon screams that he isn't one, but Kurt continues, trying to emotionally blackmail him by making him rethink the day Famil was first born and comparing it to how she is today. He comments on how Tacon must have thought that he would love Famil his whole life on the day she was born, so how can she call her hideous now, just because she appears old? Tacon replies that Famil is the most precious treasure to him and his wife Fernard, so precious that he would give his life to protect his daughter. Kurt smiles brightly, feeling happy that he understands, but Hildigard, having had enough of his stupidity, paralyzes him with magic, saying that he is only making the discussion difficult. Kurt is shocked that he can't even speak because of the spell, and Auri starts worrying, asking why her papa is sleeping in the middle of the room. Hildigard doesn't pay attention to that and asks Famil if she is sure of her decision. Famil tells her that she is sure and requests Hildigard to kill Margrave Tacon. Tacon is shocked to hear this. Even Kurt is taken aback and wonders if Famil resents her father to the point of wanting to murder him. Tacon runs upstairs as he refuses to die in a place like this. But once he reaches Famil's room, Ulia and Lies are standing there. Lies tells Tacon that she knows what he is hiding, saying that his daughter Famil was afflicted with aging syndrome, and Tacon wonders how Lies knows that. However, Lies doesn't answer him and continues that there is no cure for aging syndrome, and even if Tacon managed to dispel the curse, Famil's body won't revert to normal, and she will turn into a terrifying skeleton-like figure. To prevent Famil from reaching that stage, Tacon is trying to make a drug for eternal youth, using a demon's cells. Tacon admits that she is correct, saying that he has worked hard the entire year to return his daughter to a normal state, yet he has been failing. He cryptically says that he has done everything that man asked him to do, causing Ulia and Lies to wonder who the man is. Suddenly, Tacon says he has had enough, and he will now sell his soul to summon a demon, who will be able to save his daughter. He throws a crystal at the ground, which causes it to glow and reveal a magic circle, shocking the girls. He dramatically puts his palm on the magic circle, asking the demon to show up. However, nothing happens, which frustrates him. Lies explains that he can't use the ley line anymore, as when Kurt was digging the hot spring, the flow of ley lines was changed, which makes Tacon admire Lies's wisdom. Hildigard comes upstairs, and Tacon hides upon seeing her. But the girls tell Hildigard that Solflare informed them about her whereabouts. However, Hildigard disregards this and asks if they've been good to Kurt, which makes Lies jealous. So she says that she can smell that Hildigard took care of Kurt a minute ago, and both exchange fierce eye contact. Ulia jumps in to calm them down and asks where Kurt is right now. So Hildigard replies that she's making him take a rest in the basement, as she doesn't want him to see the terrible thing that is about to happen. She quickly takes out her sword, putting it at Tacon's neck, and the girls shockingly ask if Hildigard plans to kill Tacon. She tells them that she doesn't have any other choice, because if they let him live, he will truly summon a dangerous demon one day, and a lot of innocent people will lose their souls. She asks asks Tacon if he thought that saving his daughter in such a foul manner would make Famil happy. Hildigard says that Famil asked her to kill Tacon, so he won't take such a harsh step against humanity. Tacon is shocked, as he only wanted to try everything, whether good or bad, to save his daughter, but he weeps, saying that he still wants his daughter to live, even if it costs his own life, and that of many others. Hildigard says that if this is his final decision, she has no other choice and is about to slay him when Famil, in a young body, comes rushing out, asking Hildigard to stop. Everyone is shocked, and Famil rushes to her father to tell him that he isn't dreaming, as Kurt healed her. Meanwhile, back in the basement, Hildigard's paralysis spell starts to weaken, so Kurt can move his mouth and eyes. He asks Akiri to get a brown bottle from his bag, pull out a pill, and feed him one. On the other side, Famil and Tacon embrace emotionally, and Lies walks up to them. Noticing her, Tacon quickly gets on his knees, saying he doesn't know how to apologize for everything he has done. Lies tells him that trying to summon a demon and imprisoning another are both heavy crimes that can take away his noble status. She tells him that under any circumstances can't ignore such heinous crimes. Famil quickly comes forward, saying that her father took all of these steps for her sake, so she should be the one who gets punished. Lies again tells them that she can't ignore these crimes as a royal, but right now, she is here not as Princess Lies, but as an ordinary woman who is training in an atelier, so she will take the step that will be best for her atelier. She announces that from now onwards, Margrave Tacon will work for the betterment of her atelier, and both Tacon and Famil quickly agree. Lies then turns to Hildigard, telling her that they have a lot to discuss, but promises that she will free both her and Solflare after their discussion. Ulia sighs in relief, saying that now they only have to tell Kurt to remove the magic circle, and everything will be sorted out. But a man shows up, saying that there are no happy endings in his scripts. Ulia quickly readies her sword for battle, while Hildigard, recognizing the man, calls him Scriptor, and asks him what caused him to make a personal appearance. He says that someone tried to overwrite his script, so he is here to make the necessary edits, and Hildigard says that she won't let him dictate her life. Lies questions who he is, and Tacon reveals that he is the one who left Hildigard imprisoned at Tacon's mansion and taught him how to summon a demon. Scriptor says that he tried to get Hildigard's allies to attack humans to save her, but she tells them that she had specifically instructed all of her allies to never hurt humans under any situation, even if her life is on the line. Scriptor reflects on how his plan to make the priest assassinate Princess Lies was rewritten as well. He says this is the first time his scripts have been altered so many times and is surprised by their ability. He is even shocked that they were able to dispel the curse he put on Famil. Hearing this, Tacon loses control and angrily rushes to punch Scripture, who makes a magical barrier around himself. Ulia moves in to attack with her sword, but he tells her that it's all useless. But in that moment, she manages to crack the barrier. Scriptor is shocked to see that Ulia is the wielder of the holy sword, and decides it's too risky to fight her, so he takes out a bottle, which makes Hildigard loudly ask them to snatch the bottle from Scriptor. However, they're late, as he opens the bottle and pours it on the magical circle, activating it. Scriptor laughs, saying now he will enjoy the show of everyone's hope turning into despair. The demon lord shows up. Ulia is shocked as she killed him, but he tells her that demons are spiritual beings whose body is just a vessel. Because Ulia had damaged him so much, it took him time to recover, but now he has gotten stronger than ever. Lies takes out her wand, but the demon quickly uses an attack to throw it away. Seeing a chance, Hildigard throws an attack while Ulia rushes forward with her sword, but before she can attack, the demon throws an attack at Lies and Ulia, damaging their arm. The demon lord says that their efforts are useless against his magical barrier, as the only thing that could harm him was the holy sword, but with Ulysses' arm injured, she can't wield it anymore. Lies connects the dots that the demon is actually still weak, but he is initiating attacks to fake a superiority in their minds, so he can increase his power. Lies says that they don't need to defeat him, but rattle his spirit enough to drive him off from this world. He pushes the blade into their arms, making them wince with pain, and Lies realizes that the more pain shows on their face, the more the demon would gain power. However, the pain is unbearable, so it's impossible not to show it, and the demon laughs. Just then, Kurt shows up on the scene, and Ulia worriedly tells him to stay back, out of the magic circle. Kurt doesn't understand the seriousness of the situation, and lightheartedly says that he thought demon lords were extinct. But now that he is seeing one, it must mean there are many more left. This angers the Demon Lord, and Lies telepathically tells Ulia that provoking the Demon Lord by bluffing might rattle his spirit. But Ulia says that Kurt isn't trying to provoke him, as he is being sincere. The Demon Lord angrily questions how could Kurt treat him so lightly and throws a fireball at Kurt, which worries everyone. But Auri uses her powers to teleport the fireball right at the demon, making him scream in pain and causing the blade from Lies and Ulysses' arms to vanish. Ulia is proud of Auri, but says that she won't be able to use it for a while now. The Demon Lord is angrier than ever, and he makes an even bigger fireball. So Ulia steps in front of Kurt and uses her secret art, magic slashing technique, thinking that she won't fail this time. She tells Snowflake to combine her and Kurt's powers, and resulting in a new technique called Drain Sword, where special energy surrounds Ulysses' sword, takes the form of a dragon, and brutally attacks the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord, fearing that this is his end in this world, quickly uses all his power to piece Hildigard's chest, saying that if he dies, he will take Hildigard with him, but she smiles and breaks his spear, shocking the Demon Lord. He wonders what she is protected by, and she takes out the hard bread Kurt gave her earlier, making him wonder how powerful Kurt exactly is. The Demon Lord quickly asks Kurt if he is from Haste Village, which Kurt confirms, making the Demon Lord scream in pain and finally vanish. Kurt tells everyone that his village was often attacked by demon lords, so they came up with various counterattacks and managed to drive them away. Just as Ulia is about to say that the hard part is over, a hole forms in the ground, and Hildigard explains that Scriptor used a drug to call a demon without any magic power or souls. But now that the effective drug is over, the magic circle will start to collect souls to compensate for the summoning of the demon. She tells them that it seems like it will collect roughly 100 souls, and tells them that fighting it is useless, as it will keep appearing till it has collected the souls. Everyone is scared, and Ulia fears that at this rate, not only everyone in the castle, but also innocent lives in the city will suffer as well. However, just then, Tacon's secretary comes there with 100 buns, saying that he has been looking for them to serve them food, but the magical circle quickly consumes all the buns and vanishes, shocking everyone. Sometime later, the secretary is speaking with Bandana, who reveals that buns weren't originally food, but were offered as a substitute for sacrifices to demons, as they contained meat stuffed in wheat dough. She tells him that if he gives them to the demons, he can make them grant his wishes, from which the secretary concludes that Kurt can summon and control as many demons as he would like. He explains that after this, Famel's recovery was officially announced, and the city rejoiced at this news. Hildigard and Solflare were allowed to return to their homeland after an investigation by Mimico, and Full Moon Buns flourished as a hot spring steamed bun shop. Bandana says that it's better if people don't know much about Kurt and Auri. Speaking of Kurt, he was given an award for his work of providing relief to the citizens by making a hot spring, and is granted the title of Honorary Knight. Kurt returns home and tells people that he got a title he didn't deserve. As Ulia and Lies were the ones who did most of the things, Lies turns to Ulia and asks her to praise her flawless plan. And now Ulia is a baroness, Rakuto a viceroy, and Kurt a knight. She says that the whole atelier is under the protection of Tacon now, so other nobles won't try to harm them. Ulia praises Lies for pulling a lot of strings, and Lies whispers that she has even made arrangements for Kurt to be the next Margrave of the city if needed. On the way home, Hildigard remembers the flower Kurt gave her as a parting gift. She asks him if the flower is an Orichalcum, and he says it's a common gift to give to women. She thinks of how it's not a common gift at all and shakes her head at how he will never be able to understand a woman's heart. But Hildigard is happy to see Kurt again, since the last time they saw each other was 200 years ago. Meanwhile, Kurt concludes that this was his tale of getting kicked out of being the chores boy to finding genuine people who care about him. Rakuto explains that he has to head out to the royal capital, so Lies will be the acting viceroy in his absence, and tells Kurt to be the atelier meister in his absence, which shocks Kurt. They all say how this is such a common story, and Kurt smiles brightly. This was the end. Subscribe to not miss more recaps and watch the next video on screen.